Shalom, we're just having some technical issues. We'll be right here in a second. Are we all fixed? Are we on? Shalom everybody, welcome to KeepOlim's one-to-one interview. Get your answers to elections right here. We have 6 amazing representatives of 6 parties across the political spectrum. So you're going to hear from everybody tonight. We're very honored that the parties have come to talk to us, to talk to Olim about the issues that are concerning you as Olim. As you know, Israel is in our 3rd election in the last 12 months. That's a lot of elections. That's a lot of papers in the Kalpi being thrown away. So we are going to give you the answers, and hopefully this time we're going to be successful in getting a result in the election, and we'll have a government. Because right now there's no government. People, like a lot of Olim Kadashim, who we had a lot of problems the last few weeks with getting their Sal Klita and their army pay and all these other pays that they're supposed to get, but they didn't get them because the government ran out of money. So first in studio with me, helping me, the camera crew is Vladislav Volkov and Sami Wanan. Vladislav is an Oleh from Russia, Sami is an Oleh from Venezuela, and Yafa on the board of KeepOlim. Yafa Safadi is on my Facebook. She's a board member of KeepOlim from Mexico. And joining us as our first guest tonight is Chaver Knesset Alex Kushnir, who's number 7 on the Knesset list of Israel Bayteinu. Now, Alex, some of you may know because he was the Director General of Misrad Klita and Aliyah. And we gotten to know him in the last couple of years. Now, so Alex is from Israel Bayteinu Party, which is led by Avigdor Lieberman. And the last election that we had a few months ago, they had 8 Knesset seats. So, Alex, welcome, shalom.
Hi, Lami.
Hi, Alex.
How are
nice
you?
to see you again. So tell your audience about yourself.
Well, first of all, I want to tell your audience about you, because the work that you're doing is amazing, and we know each other for 2 or 3 years working together for Olim, when I was the General Director of Misrad Klita, and I'm happy to see that you continue working, and I hope that we will cooperate in the future for Olim, because you're doing an amazing job, and thank you for this opportunity. No, I want to see the questions. So thank you for this opportunity to talk to your audience and to the Olim. So what did you ask me about myself?
Yeah, so by the way, we have 6 amazing candidates today. 5 of them are Olim Chadashim. Now, Alex is an Oleh Chadash me a long
You're
time
always
ago.
Oleh Chadash.
Once an Oleh Chadash, always an Oleh Chadash.
That's right.
So Alex made Aliyah when he was 14 years old from Russia.
Ukraine.
Ukraine, Slika. So tell us about
Yeah.
yourself.
Okay, so as Leami told you, I'm Oleh Chadash, and I made Aliyah when I was almost 14 years old with my mom. I have started my life in Israel in Ashkelon. I finished the high school, and then I went to the army as every Israeli boy, or almost every Israeli boy. I went to Givaiti. I was an officer, the company commander, and then I joined the Shabak. I worked for Shabak for 8 years. I have 2 degrees. One is economic, BA, another one is MBA. And I have an experience, a managerial experience in private sector. And then my last position, I was the Director General of Misrad Klita, Ministry of Aliyah and Integration, and also I was the head of Nativ. Probably you know what is Nativ. Probably the Olim who are coming from post-Soviet Union know what is Nativ, because the Nativ is responsible for approving the Aliyah for Jews from post-Soviet Union. And as for now, I am the Knesset member for Israel Bayteinu party, number 7. And yeah, as Leami told us, we are in the 3rd elections, and you were talking about the result. So I hope that we will achieve the result, and not only just the result, but a good result. Because what we want to do, we want to create a Zionist, liberal government in this country, because that was the dream of Ben-Gurion, that was the dream of Jabotinsky, that was the dream of Menachem Begin, and we are continuing this dream, and I hope that we will make it true, make it happen.
Okay, so some people think that Israel Bayteinu is a party only for Russians. What do you have to say to all the Olim?
I think that you can say that we're not only for Russians, because when I was the general director of Misrad Klita, we were working together helping to all Olim. Doesn't matter if they're from Russia or they're from United States or from Ethiopia or from England, or doesn't matter, from Spain, from Venezuela. Each and every place we have a problem with the camera. Guys,
we have a camera problem. Sorry about that, folks. We just dropped the camera on you. So, Alex, you were saying?
I was saying that so we need to speak loudly? Okay. So, I was saying that we care about all Olim just because the Aliyah is one of the most important issues for Israel, and this country is for Olim. And this country was established by Olim, was developed by Olim, and I think that without Aliyah, this country could not exist at all.
Very well said.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk. You talked about Nativ before.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're having some problems because Russians who immigrated to America, who are now trying to immigrate, we have 700,000 Russian American Jews.
Yeah.
And some of them have been having a lot of problems now because Nefesh B'Nefesh is sending them to Nativ.
First of all, this is the law, and this is the how do you say it? This is the law of Misrad Apnim. Okay, and the Nativ is responsible for Russian Jewry, Russian-speaking Jewry, and that's why they're sent to Nativ. What my goal was to open a Nativ representative office in the United States to help these people, and I think that when we will come back to the government, will be one of our goals, to open a representative office in the United States to help 700 Jewish people from post-Soviet Union to come and to
so
make
Bayteinu is a party that actually wants the Misrad Klita and Aliyah.
Of course.
Because most parties don't want to touch us, Olim.
Well, you can see what's going on now. You have a minister from Likud party who doesn't care about Aliyah at all, who doesn't care about his ministry. You can check his tweets, and he has like 300 tweets all about the defense and all about the security, but nothing about Aliyah. And he's already 1 year a minister of Aliyah and integration, and we were just struggling together to start to try to release the budgets for soldiers, for Olim, for Avtachat Akhnasa and stuff like that, and I hope that we succeeded and people will start receiving this money.
So, okay, you were the Director General of the Misrad Klita and Aliyah. What did you do that you're very proud of?
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, I think that people who remember the previous website of Misrad Klita can now see the difference. This is first, because one of the important problems that I saw when I came to Misrad Klita, that people don't know about their rights. So my goal was to make it easy to receive the information. So we rebuild the site, and also, which is very important, we had opened a digital personal cabinet for each and every Ole. And now with the very simple process of identification, you can get in and you can see the information which is relevant only for you. How much money should you receive? What are courses which are you're obliged to receive? all the services that you need to receive, and also there are a lot of services that now you can do in distance, and you don't need to go to the office.
No. What things would you say you didn't get to accomplish that you'd like to accomplish in the next election?
In September 2018, I initiated a government decision which was aimed to provide the services of government in languages of Olim. And we made a big working team with other ministries, and there are process very advanced. We reach a very advanced level, but unfortunately I had to leave the position, and when I left the position the process has been stopped. So for now I think that when we'll come back I will continue, because we have so many Olim here, and these Olim needed time to learn Hebrew, but until they learn Hebrew they need to receive the services from the government, and there is no reason that government will not provide the services in the language of Olim. It could be Russian, English, French,
So
Spanish.
that was a question of a lot of Olim. A few Olim wrote me today complaining that they go to the hospitals and English, there's no tofesim, there's no forms in English. That they go to the Misrad Klita and there's no forms in English, there's nobody to talk to in English. So how do you respond to that?
That's what I'm saying. We have to provide the services, not only the basic services, but also the advanced services of the government on the languages of Olim, because we cannot expect from people to learn Hebrew during 1 year or stuff like that.
I'm still bored by Am Haaretz, bro. I'm still illiterate.
But this is your problem, because when I was the
we got a sign here. We should go and.
Okay, I will answer.
Okay.
So about Ivrit, about learning Hebrew, I was the one who expanded the private Ulpan network when I came to the ministry, and I think it's very important, because the success of Aliyah, there are three main keys. One is the language, another one is the right job placement, and we opened 3,000 professional courses which were funded by Misrat Lida, 80%, so people could find a right job for them, or to learn the right job for them, and also, of course, children, the education of people. I think you just need to give it to me, because it's very difficult to...
We can't read it. We're like, no offense, my eyes are like 100 years old. I can't read this stuff. Okay.
100 years old?
100 years old.
You mean both of them together?
Both of them together. Kamishim v'kamishim. So let's talk here for a second. Some people blame your party or Lieberman for the deadlock in the elections, because we've had elections 3 times. So what would your party do differently this election to make sure that there's a unity government? That some people wrote me that they considering voting for you, for your party, but they don't want to have a 4th election.
We don't want to have a 4th election also, but you need to remember that the last time Likud and KeepOlim together had 65 seats in the Knesset, which is enough for a unity government. We told them, guys, you just create this government and you will get 88 seats from us as a bonus. We don't need anything, just create the government. But the problem was that both of them, also KeepOlim and also Likud, Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, had preferred their own interests and their own ambitions, and not the interest of the country. So at that time, we will decide. And at that time, we will do everything to create a Zionist liberal government in this country, because only this kind of government can meet the challenges that we have in security, in economics, and also in social life.
Okay. So here's an interesting question for you. This will be tough. We'll get right to the chase. We have 42,000 plus Olim in KeepOlim from 100 different countries from around the world, half of whom are religious.
Okay.
And we put everyone together. We're one big diverse community. And a couple of months ago, some religious people got a little bit perturbed at you for making some videos which they perceive to be anti-religious.
Okay. So, first of all, you need to understand that Israel Bayteinu and me personally has nothing against the religious and nothing against Jews and nothing against the traditions. The opposite is the right. We want this country to be a Jewish state, but also a free state. So if someone was insulted by my video, I'm sorry, I apologize, because the goal was to show that there are religious services which are intervened into the social services without any regulation. So that's what my point. And also, if someone has been insulted by that, I'm sorry. We want a Jewish state. We support the religious people. We support the tradition, the people who keep traditions, and we want a united society, but the free society when people, each one can choose his way of life.
Okay, so like we have a lot of Olim that are struggling, and a lot of Olim are leaving. Ergo, our name KeepOlim, because so much money is spent convincing 30,000 people to come to Israel. Last year we had 30,000 new immigrants, which is amazing. But the sad part is, I'm the one that watches them all leave. And I think with a little bit more help in jobs, in the OPONs like you did with, you're creating private OPONs, which is a great thing. I think with a little bit more help with jobs and housing is a very big issue, because Olim, you used to have klitot, like Merkaz Klita, and you're getting rid of them, where Olim could spend the first 5-6 months in a contained place. Now they have to find their own apartments. You need guarantors for those apartments. But Olim don't know anybody in the country, and they don't accept your family from abroad from guaranteeing your rent. So how would you solve the housing crisis among Olim?
Okay, so we have a very solid program. What to do in next Knesset regarding the Aliyah issue? Ma?
Make sure you answer this question.
Okay. We need to answer.
That's the next question. Continue, please.
Regarding the Aliyah issue, we need to expand the social housing building in Israel. We need to expand the private ulpans. We need to make programs prior Aliyah for people, so they will come here much more prepared. And we already started it. I can tell you that in the post-Soviet Union area and also in France, we had ulpans for 500 hours like we have here in Israel. So people were coming to Israel already with the language, with the knowledge. And this is very important thing, and I think that this kind of thing should be expanded. Also, as I told you, the government initiative for providing services in the languages of Olim is also our goal, and we will do it in the next Knesset. And of course, we need to expand the professional projects for people like doctors and nurses and programists and cookers and whatever. You need to you can choose. And of course, we need to help people with the mental support, because both of us know the problem. Both of us know.
Both of us have seen it.
Yeah.
We have 40% of the suicides in Israel are sadly Olim. Now the majority of the Olim are Russian and Ethiopian. However, in our group, KeepOlim, we've had 15 suicides and overdoses among our 40,000 plus people. And so we have seen myself and Dr. Lubin, who volunteers to run and oversee our mental health program, have saved over 180 Olim that have called us. We've put people in hospitals. We've called their families. We got them therapy. We took care of them. We just gave them hugs. This is the stuff we do, because sadly the government is lacking. It was up to me. I was in Ola. After 9 months, I had neighbors bringing me food because I had no food. I was sick. I had no money, nothing, and I was leaving the country. And then everybody said, go use your mouth, which is what I'm known for, my big mouth. And I used it, and in 2 weeks we had 8,000 people join this. And my partner, Svika Griver, came to me. He said, I'm a lawyer. why don't we actually help Olim and form a nonprofit? So that's what we did. In April, KeepOlim is starting our support groups. We're having 50 support groups in 15 cities in 5 languages, overseen by Dr. Robert Lubin, and we'll have support groups for every diversified group you could think of, for old people, for young people, for couples, for people who are having issues with drugs and alcohol, substance abuse, for the LGBT community, for lone soldiers after the army. All these different groups were created with the one purpose in mind. It's for Olim, by Olim. All the therapists are Olim themselves because they understand, you understand what we're going through. But in the next government, whatever government happens, we need to have a mental health hotline because it's we're doing Band-Aid work here. Like, honestly, we have 180 calls that we answered so far, but we need to have a hotline. Press 1 for Spanish, press 2 for Portuguese, 3 for English,
Well, not
4
only
for
that,
Russians.
the issue is when people press the button, we need to make sure that the guy who is answering the phone actually knows the language.
Well, that's the
And,
sad part.
yeah,
Iran, the suicide hotline
Exactly.
here, only speaks Arabic and Hebrew.
So
And the majority of the suicides are Russian and Ethiopian. There's nobody to speak to.
So we were trying to create this hotline together with Leami and Swika in last Knesset, but the problem is that today there is a hotline in the Ministry of Health, and they don't want to expand it for another languages. And I can assure you that we will do our best efforts to make it happen in next Knesset in the Misrad Klita, because this is the ministry who should care for Olim.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to say at the end?
I
Or would
think
you
people
like-
want to
Yeah.
questions, no?
I have a problem here. I'm
Oh, you
reading.
have-
Hold on, I'm reading a letter that people cannot hear. I'm opening my phone to read questions, but the link is not working on KeepOlim.
No, I'm getting.
I just got a couple of things, so check KeepOlim fan page and check KeepOlim the Facebook group.
I think I didn't share the live video on the fan page. That's what people
Are you
don't
aware that the
understand.
link does not appear on the KeepOlim page? Someone just sent me someone's watch party to see it. So we're glad you're all creating watch parties. Let's get, hopefully my crew could get this fixed so people could see what we're doing here. See, the problem is if I press the thing on my phone here, we're doing this live on the air. I get my video, so I'm watching myself. I can't read the questions. So,
These
all
are
right.
Technical issues.
So there's a lot of technical issues here. So I'm sorry about that. So
No
let's finish with you, brother. What would you like to end the interview on?
Okay, I can tell you that our goal is to create a Zionist liberal government in this country. Because only this kind of government can take care of all the issues which are important for all of us. And also, I can assure you that our party wants to be in Misrad Klita because we are the only party who cares for Olim. Doesn't matter where they come from and how long they're in Israel. Because we believe that Aliyah is one of the most important issues in the Jewish state. We want it to be Jewish state, but we want it to be a free state. Live and let others live. Thank you very much, and I hope that you will support in these elections. Give us a power to help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. This is Alex Kushnir, Mispar Sheva, Chaver Knesset Akshav, and hopefully after the election, he'll have a lot more people under him.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Leami, thank you, guys. Thank you for watching us. I hope that you will give us your support, and we will win together. Thank you.
Okay, coming up is the representative from KeepOlim One, and we'll be back in 30 seconds with Michal. Let's take a picture with Alex.
Yeah, guys,
Take a picture.
Yes, of course.
We're doing this live on the air. We're taking a time. Thank you very much, Alex. Okay, so let me just talk for a couple seconds till the next guest comes in.
Now I understand.
What?
See, now there is a microphone.
We're improving.
microphone.
For Coca-Cola
There is a
Levant, we
stand
have
for
a
everyone.
microphone.
Okay.
So I apologize to Alex for our third world
I was the
production.
pilot guy.
For our third world production. No. Okay. So coming up is Michal Cotler Wunsh, and she is number 30 in the blue and white party. So we're waiting for her to come in. Okay, so while the politicians are taking pictures of themselves, which is a good sign here because maybe they'll all get along in the Knesset and we could have a unity government or some type of government. Don't matter what government. I think everybody.
No, we need to have a government. It doesn't. No matter what government you have today.
I stand corrected. Okay. Okay, coming in is the candidate from the blue and white party. And her name.
How would you like me to succeed?
Come sit over here. We're doing this live. I'm meeting Michal for the first time on the air. Nice to meet you. Come have a seat so they can see your pretty self.
Well, thank you very much. Already a compliment. I'm glad I came.
So sitting with me also is Ann Pollard, who's also on the board of KeepOlim. And we're so happy to have her. She's a new addition to the board. And are we ready to begin with Michal? Yes, we are.
Absolutely.
So you're very interesting. You're also an Olim.
I am.
And you're number 30 on the blue and white
36.
list.
30 is really a good place.
But
I
you're
would switch,
but you're
36.
gonna make 30. I'm sure you're all the polls say you're getting 36 seats.
I say
so we're
Bezrat
pushing
Hashem
you.
Uvishtalutein.
Now you're an Olim Chadash from Canada,
Indeed. Montreal.
Montreal, and when I read about you, I'm like in awe because you have a very famous father. Her father is Erwin Cotler, the famous international lawyer. What am I supposed to move
I
over
move as
here?
well. Yeah, you can't see me. It's okay.
Well, no, everyone needs to see you. Like, you know, if my cameraman says you can't be seen.
Is this good? Is this better?
So, her father is Erwin Cotler, who's a very internationally famous Jewish lawyer. So, how did
Human rights activist.
and human rights activist, and he helped with the peace treaty, and he also helped with Nelson Mandela.
He represented Nelson Mandela in Canada. He represented Anatoly Sharansky before Natan made Aliyah to Israel.
Wow.
When Anatoly Sharansky was in the Soviet
So-
Union. He was very active in the struggle for the.
So when did you make Aliyah? Let's start in the beginning.
So, first of all, I was born in Jerusalem. So Erwin is married to my mom, my biological
Okay.
father. I do not know. My mom remarried when I was 8 years old. I
Okay.
was born in Jerusalem, grew up in Jerusalem, spent those first few years with my mom being the Likud parliamentary secretary. So the
Okay.
night of the elections in 1977, I spent in the Knesset Miznon celebrating what was known as the Mahapach.
The revolution of Menachem
Yeah,
Begin.
that's right, Menachem Begin, and I was really privileged to know him well. My mom married Professor Erwin Cotler, as you mentioned, when I was a young child, and we moved to Montreal. I grew up in Montreal. The first time that I moved to Israel was to do the Mechina program at Hebrew University. I moved on my own.
Okay.
At the end of that year,
So you were a Chayel Bodeda.
I was indeed Chayelet Bodeda.
Well, let's
and
see
I
the
was an
muscles
officer,
on
and
you.
it was 30-something years
No.
ago. Yes.
Oh my God. I thought it was a
Absolutely.
few
Poor
years
children. I
ago.
have a son in the army.
My notes here.
A few years ago. I'll take it.
My notes
So
here said it was a few
This
years
is a good
ago.
start. I'm 30th, and I was in the army a few years ago. I'll take it.
Wow.
No, it was 32 years ago that I was in the army.
So how many kids you have?
I have 4 children.
And how old are they?
My oldest is in the army. He's 20.
Wow. No way.
Yeah. I have an 18-year-old in Mechina and 2 teenagers.
Wow.
Indeed.
So how are you going to have time to be a Knesset member?
The opposite. Now I have time to do this.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the issues with you.
Sure.
Okay, how did it feel to grow up with a famous person? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I come from Hollywood,
Yeah.
and I am friends with a lot of children of celebrities, and some of them struggle, and some of them
Yeah.
succeed even more than their parents
So
have.
anybody who knows my dad, first of all, he's a professor. It's a little bit different when you're famous and a professor. You're not that cool. And am I right? And the other thing that I'd say is he's a very, very humble person. And the last thing is, because of his area of expertise and activity, human rights, it's not so glamorous or glorious. It's not Hollywood. We knew about the genocides in Darfur and Rwanda and Syria and China later on. We struggled for Soviet Jewry and for bringing Ethiopian aliyot, before the Moshe and Shlomo operations. And really, human rights is not as glamorous as you would think. Nothing like Hollywood. So famous.
Only when Oprah joins.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
So it didn't feel, it wasn't at all overwhelming as a child. The opposite, actually. The whole world of that kind of responsibility and the accountability each one of us has, and the importance of each person making a difference. So I don't know if you know the name Raoul Wallenberg, but
Yes, I do.
So everything that my father has ever done, he's named for Raoul Wallenberg. Every
That's
honor he's
beautiful.
received, and the reason is, and what's important about that is that every person can make a difference, and that's his legacy, right? He saved more Jews at the end of World War II than any single country in the whole world. So that's the legacy, of Raoul Wallenberg, but it's also the lesson that we grew up with at home. And that's a sense of responsibility that probably brought me to serve as a lone soldier, and then after being a young lawyer in Israel and moving to Canada with my own young family,
So you moved back and forth a
I
lot.
did.
You're like a lot of our Olim.
Yeah.
You
so-
know, it takes a while to put down the shorashim, the roots. We go and come back and go and come back.
Right, so you're right, and actually coming on your own is one challenge, and it's one specific kind of challenge. Certainly to serve in the army, and certainly at the time, actually, nobody really knew what to do with lone soldiers when I was a lone soldier. It wasn't very well planned, or there was no real institution of lone soldierism. We would get a little bit of help with our rent, and a present for Rosh Hashanah and a present for Pesach. That was about it. But returning with a family, I then, was in Canada to do a master's in law at McGill. Of course, when you have family away, and every Olim knows how that is, you don't have the infrastructure that people have when, their whole family's around. So we were in Canada for a few years near my family, and returned to Israel when I already had 4 pretty young kids 10 years ago. So that was the second, it was more bringing 4 Canadians, they were making Aliyah to Israel. That was a
Okay.
whole other set of challenges.
So let's talk about, we have a lot of questions people wrote me, because we have a diverse group of 42,000 plus Olim from 100 countries, and I think it's the first time ever all Olim have been united. So somebody asked me a question for Kotler One.
Yeah.
That's you,
That's
Kotler One.
me, Kotler One.
So there are 500,000 mostly Olim, part Jews, quarter Jews, half Jews, once dated a Jew. Okay, so there's 500,000 people who cannot get married here because the Rabbanut does not allow civil marriages. So they have to go to Cyprus or Greece or wherever to get married. And a lot of people feel that's like Suf Beit, that's like the second-class citizen, because people dream about getting married in front of their family, their friends. Here we have to send people abroad and then come back here and have a party that doesn't really count when the rabbi or minister or whoever marries them, because it just doesn't, it's not the same.
So actually, Blue and White's and the party platform is very, very clear on this. One of our most important mission statements in the Blue and White Party platform, and I recommend reading it. It's not that long. It's about 47 pages, and it refers to all issues of religion and state, including
It's
marriage.
in English?
It exists in English as well.
And
absolutely. Not sure. It may be that there are at least portions of it may already.
Because some
be
of
in
our
English.
Russians may not
Maybe,
read English,
maybe.
you know?
But in English for sure. But what I do want to say is, with regard to religion and state, Blue and White has a very clear agenda. And it actually doesn't only pertain to Olim, right? These challenges and the fact that these issues have been festering for many years already, and there are 400,000 people walking around Israel today without a religion. Mechusarei dat, that's what they're termed. And that has implications for all kinds of life decisions, marriage, and many other issues. Those are the type of commitments that Blue and White has not only, as I said, committed to in the platform, but is leading a discussion in terms of our responsibility and our accountability, that we intend to both lead the discussion, lead a conversation, but also make real change with regard to all the arrangements of what's called the status quo, which is at this point really crumbled and non-existent.
So now, let me stop you. Like, what? Okay, we've had 3 elections already, and no results.
Yeah. This
Okay.
is not related to the marriage issue.
Right.
Yes.
We changed the subject.
Change the subject.
I have ADD.
That's
we,
okay,
We have
you're
to
good,
go
I'm
on.
going with
We
you.
have all these questions here. You just got to zarem, you know.
I'm
We got to
zareming.
flow.
I'm flowing.
Okay. So, why won't I'm tongue tied. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. So, in the next election, that we're all hoping in a couple of weeks will actually have some type of result, would Blue and White consider sitting with Likud?
100%. So I just want to say something about the notion of unity government. The first election that Blue and White went to, we're at the third one, you're 100% right. Blue and White called for a unity government. Actually, it is related. You didn't go off subject to the
Okay.
first question about marriage and the general changes in religion and state, because in order to be able to make these changes, we actually need to give a reflection in the political sphere to what is the reality in Israeli society, which is that the majority of the people are actually talking in the way that we are, both about religion and state, and many other festering issues that the state of Israel has thus far sort of either swept under the carpet, or not dealt with on the executive branch level. And what's happened is often that I don't want to call them radical voices, but more on the what's on the extremes of the spectrum, has arm wrestled governments in order to form coalitions, maybe abusing their power to nix the possibility of that majority that's somewhere in the middle being able to form a government.
Each political party is like setting their boundaries. I won't do this and I won't do that if this one's this or that one's that. So it's very, very hard. Bibi has a block of 55.
You're
He
right.
won't negotiate without the block. You guys set things. You won't have Bibi lead the government if he's indicted. So you each have set
Right.
perimeters that are very, very hard to cross.
So I'll explain that.
Wait, hold on. One more question. We'll
Okay.
add it in.
Okay.
Would you be willing to sit with 13 or 14 Arab joint list members to form a government, or are they off limits to you?
So here's the sort of overarching principle. The Blue and White platform, and as I said, it took us 2 weeks. We're don't forget, it's a slate comprised of 3 different parties: Telem, Chosen Israel, and Yesh Atid. 3 different parties that each had their own party platform. We combined into one single slate called the Blue and White slate. But we have a party platform that we formed. Out of those 3 parties, we sat in a room. It took us a lot of days to come up with an agreement that we could all sign our names to. Each of the 3 parties, and each member of each of the parties is fully aware of what this platform says. And what this platform says is as follows: Israel is a Jewish and democratic state. And as such, any party willing to accept Israel as a Jewish and democratic state will be invited into a unity government along these parameters. There's sort of a baseline of understanding.
Would you
that
sit
it
with the
includes
religious
Likud.
party?
It includes any
Okay.
party that is willing. Now, you asked a question about the Mishutefet, and the answer for the Mishutefet is they don't accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, only as a democratic state. And there may be some ultra-Orthodox parties that don't accept Israel's right to exist as a democratic state, only as a Jewish state. So the answer actually has to be turned back to them, because the assumption is that any party invited to this coalition government has to accept that parameter of Israel as a Jewish and it's an important and democratic state, both.
Okay,
Not
so
either or.
here's another question on the
Okay.
same lines. How does your party platform, this was sent in by somebody, how does your party platform differ from Labor Gesher Meretz?
I haven't read Labor Gesher Meretz. I don't know if they have one, to be very honest, because they are also three parties that came together, and I'm not sure they have a party platform.
Well, we'll find out later when Haggai comes in and talks
exactly,
to us.
ask him. I'll tell you where I imagine or I suspect would be the first challenge, and it has to do directly with your last question. The assumption that Israel, in order to be able to, I would say, address the festering issues that we discussed, religion and state, the fact that the executive branch has for so long been actually completely dysfunctional, so all kinds of manifestations of that you can see not only in issues of religion and state, in issues of education and healthcare and infrastructure that have gone actually, there's no long-term plan in any ministry but the Ministry of Defense in the State of Israel. You wouldn't run a supermarket like that.
Well, the country is run by Yehia Beseder.
Right. So
that's basically how we run the country.
So there's a political. So that's a political reality that we want to challenge and say that you can't run a country like that responsibly. To run a country responsibly, transparently, you have to create long-term plans. It's even if, for the small reason, let's say healthcare is an example, it takes 10 years to train a doctor. We know there'll be 13 million people here in however many years, 2048. We need to be able to plan how many doctors will need to take care of those 13 million people. For that, you need long-term plans. For all of that to happen, in our understanding of what blue and white needs to do in order to form a government, there are those parameters, as I said, of any party that's willing to join a coalition that accepts Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. I'm not sure if Gesher of Meretz has that as a prerequisite for which
Okay,
government
well, we'll
that
ask
enter, but
Haggai.
you ask
Okay,
Haggai.
so Fernando Q. Oh,
Yes.
Fernando asked, this is his question. He wants to know the future economic plan policies for blue and white to reduce the high cost of living we have in this country, because a lot of Olim are suffering, and a lot of Olim leave. So, how would you answer that question?
So I want to say to all Olim in general, and I think the Olim's challenges is one symptom or one group that's very deeply affected by the dysfunctionality that I'm referring to. That is the dysfunctionality of the executive branch. And when we talk about long-term planning, I can throw around whatever slogans and say how we'll change the country in little small things economically. I think that definitely the cost of living has to be lowered, and the price of real estate has to be addressed in some way or another. But I want to go back to the overarching principle, and that is, so long as there are no long-term plans, you cannot lower the cost of living, because we're going day by day, month by month, and prospectively planning our budget for next year rather than retrospectively paying for last year's budget rather than prospectively planning next year's budget, which is the right way of doing it.
So here's a
answer
question, changing the topic a little bit. Somebody wrote this in. Do you support the Trump peace? Well, not you personally, but does blue and white support the Trump peace plan?
So the easy answer for me is to say, and Benny Gantz actually said this, and told Trump himself, is immediately after the elections, assuming that he's elected to be prime minister, he will do everything that has to be done in order to begin to advance the Trump peace plan. I want to say that we're in the midst of an important democratic process. We're 1 week now before an election. The Trump peace plan, we were, exposed to it publicly at least about a month before an election. And as a sovereign state, I think Olim can appreciate this, each one coming from their own sovereign states. It's very important that a country be able to say, hold on, we're in the midst of something here. We need to finish this up and know who the person is that's leading this next step, and not do anything haphazardly, quickly before an election, under the radar. So, in principle, yes, blue and white, and Benny Gantz already endorsed the Trump plan. There will be discussions of, exactly how it'll be formulated.
Well, even Bibi today said that the Arabs are not going to be transferred.
Exactly
that
right.
an Israeli citizen will stay an Israeli citizen, and he will not. So that's Likud saying that. So obviously Likud is a little different than the Trump plan.
I want to say the differences are really very small, and that's why when you ask me about the possibility of unity government with Likud, ideologically, not personally, if you take away the personal piece, or the possible indictment piece, I'm a lawyer, so not even talking about
what
that
kind
at the
of
moment.
law?
International law.
Okay.
And, human rights.
That's good. So like your father.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I'm humbled. I'm not like my father in my own way, but I just want to say that it's very important to realize that the Trump peace plan has one more incredible feature of it, and that is that it challenges paradigms that existed internationally, and we're accepted certainly by all former American presidents, and that is that Israel's right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state is an undisputable fact, according to the Trump peace plan. That's where it begins. Then we have to start talking about the reality of other people that are here and how we coexist in this reality where there are millions of other people here. But the first thing, and the other important thing that you touched on, is that the Likud and Blue and White can both rally, or ideologically, the people who vote for Likud and ideologically the people who vote for Blue and White can all rally around the understandings that will be formulated out of this plan, and that has the potential for another very important thing for Blue and White, and that is a national reconciliatory process. Because if you look at the divisiveness, and this last year has not helped to, bridge all kinds of gaps, neither within Israel internally, between religious and secular, and Sfaradim and Mizrahim, and Olim Chadashim and Olim Vatikim, nor, and of course Arabs and Jews, nor when we look at externally at where we are with diaspora jury and how we haven't been able to propel forward the need for a conversation between what we view as really the most important partners that we have across the ocean.
So a lot of Olim have written to me talking about a lot of Olim have problems. There are professionals in the countries of where they came from, and here they have, in some professions, like a bus driver, for instance, somebody just wrote us this morning about this question, that he had to take the test to be a bus driver in Hebrew. And apparently, I guess he didn't do so good. You know what I'm saying? It took me, we have tests for a lot of professions that are not available in the language. And if they are, they're not translated correct. So, the whole room could sit there together and say, question 20 doesn't make any sense. There is no answer because it's not a professional that translated it. It was just a translator.
So I think you're hitting all of the important issues right on the head that says this. In order for absorption of Aliyah to be successful, I know it personally, I know it collectively, I know it from friends, I know it from family members, there has to be a long-term plan. There has to be, for every community, an identifiable plan that's a little different. So Olim Chadashim from Ethiopia, by definition, are going to need completely different things than Olim Chadashim from the former Soviet Union, or from Canada, or from the United States, or from France. What you're describing, actually, and I know that it's been very difficult, for example, for Olim from France, the professional certification or lack of professional certification when they arrive here, and it's very disappointing. And I think that there has to be, and when I look at, and I looked at how many ministers there have been in the last 5 years, you know how many ministers of absorption there have been in 5 years?
How many?
That is unacceptable. And it's no wonder that there has been no integral, holistic plan that with a foresight of what every community will need, what every aliyah looks like, and what its challenges are going to be before they come. Right? It's clear when immigration from France, for example, was on the rise. There was need already to prepare.
There was 9,000 people, 50,000 people in France are sitting on suitcases. They filled out the papers, but they ain't coming.
They're not coming.
Because 40% of the French
Gone
already
back.
left.
That's
I
right.
live in the Champs-Élysées, Tel Aviv, y'all. I live on Bugrashop Ben Yehuda.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't get more Champs-Élysées than
And
that.
that is-
And I've
yeah.
watched the whole community go up and leave.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. A lot of the people in my old pond
And that
left.
is the responsibility of the executive branch of government. It's unacceptable that there's been an executive branch that's failed so colossally to create these plans. That is the question. And now it's amazing that you have this organization and other Olim organizations that offer this support. And ironically, the fact that all these organizations exist sort of lets the government off the hook. Because the truth is, not all of it can be done by government. Civic society is very important in a healthy, vibrant society such as ours. Except that it doesn't alleviate the responsibility of government. And in that, I would say that the executive branch in Klitat Aliyah has colossally failed to create appropriate long-term plans. And we see the manifestations of it on everything that you've raised and many more issues.
Okay, one question referring to you that you said before. So you told us that you were in the revolution of 1977 as a girl when Menachem Begin won. You were in the Knesset.
I was.
Right. So what would your parents say that you're now in blue and white and you're not? You made a revolution of your own and joined blue and white as opposed to staying with Likud.
I'll tell you something. Likud is an ideology. Menachem Begin was a humanist. He was a Jew. He was committed to human rights. His universal values stemmed from his Jewish identity. But he was an ideologue. Menachem Begin was not the party, and the party was not Menachem Begin. He led the party. And a party or an ideology devoid of values or with changed values leaves it very, very empty for me. It's not anything that I grew up on. These are not the values, that I grew up on. And to change a party, if it's just the name of the party, is not the issue. The question is where the values are. And I feel that the values are where I'm at. With Telim, with which I joined, blue and white.
So here's another question. A lot of Olim are affected by Otzal HaPoal. If you don't know what Otzal HaPoal is, you're very, very lucky. See, when you get to be in minus in Israel, and all of us Olim know, we all in minus at the bank. It's the craziest banking system I have ever heard of. Every week they call me Mr. Lawrence. The bank calls me Mr. Lawrence. You're at your credit limit. Why don't we increase your credit limit by another 10,000 shekels? My credit, I have so many zeros in my. I can never leave Israel, not because I have Otzal Poal, because I owe money to Bank Leumi. Some people's best friend is Jesus. Mine's Bank Leumi. I owe them so much money, it's not even funny. So my question to you: we have people that get stuck because Olim sign contracts in Hebrew. First mistake with not knowing what they're doing. They lose their job or whatnot. They get into Otzal Poal, and a lot of them discover this when they go to the airport to either leave the country or go on vacation, or they have a sick parent. Like my father died 2 years ago, and I just had to get up and leave. And then suddenly, for some of these people, they stopped at the airport, and they didn't know that they have these problems. So what would you do to fix Otzal Poal?
So again, you're exposing issues one after the other that shows a clear misunderstanding of the demographies that have arrived here as new immigrants, with needs and lack of understanding of how the society functions. This is something that new Olim should be made aware of. They should be receiving instruction on the different financial understanding that maybe they were accustomed to. It's unacceptable that Olim find themselves surprised by the situation of Hotzah Poal. It's an unacceptable reality that you're describing.
And I went with a friend when she got in trouble and the person at Hotzah Poal said, don't help her. Like, she owes 3 times the amount of money as she thought, and they're like, you have to give us your passport. And I said I had a sick father at the time, so they said, you can't sign this because you won't be able to leave
either.
Right. So this is a real problem.
Yeah,
now,
you're raising so many problems.
All right, here's another quick. We're going this quick here because so many people. What's blue and white's view on the Haredi draft dodging? Not that religious people are not going into the army.
So first of all, define religious, right? So there are many religious people in the army. You're talking specifically about the ultra-Orthodox community.
The ultra-Orthodox.
Look, once again, there are ways of doing things in discourse. There is a covenant called the Gavizon Meidan Covenant. It was written 16 years ago by an Orthodox rabbi called Yaakov Meidan and a very secular law professor by the name of Ruti Gavizon. And first of all, they called it a covenant. It's not a law. The covenant was meant to regulate everything that we're talking about, all issues of religion and state, but also as they affect us, how we relate to each other, how we share the burden. In this case, you're talking about sharing the burden in army service. And there are ways of creating mechanisms, and we have a responsibility, the state, not we, has a responsibility to create mechanisms that enable those that can serve to serve. And those that have good reason not to serve. The only thing is there has to be clear policy. And when there is no clear policy, it's actually a gateway for people to misuse, abuse, use poorly, and find what's called lacunes in the law so that they can escape from doing their civic duty. In this case, with a Haredi enlistment, I believe that the right way to go about it is with discussion, not with law. is with, look, you realize that in ultra-Orthodox communities, people want to work. They don't want to be poor. And the Army began creating mechanisms for professional development through the Army, so that those serving would receive all kinds of incentives to serve, and that would be able to benefit them in working when they finish the Army. And that is the way to make change. You can't hand down law and force people into a corner, because they're going to push you back. No doubt, when you make change.
Okay.
Change is a very hard thing to do.
So let me ask one last question.
Sure.
Stefan Kushnir just wrote this. How will Gantz rule differently than Bibi? Good question, Stefan. Thank you.
So, I want to say, the question is, and this is a really good question actually that Stefan asked, because I think it's a question to us and to the voting public. I think that at this point we become accustomed to a very certain way, a certain management style, let's call it, okay? It's a top-down management style, one man who was both prime minister and many ministers in the last 10 years, in addition to being the prime minister. I think at some point he was holding 7 portfolios, and I think that is probably the most important way that Gantz will be a different prime minister, and that is that he has no need to be doing everything on his own, the opposite. Gantz is a person that consults and appoints people, each to do their job, and then report back to him, and makes decisions based on consultations, and has a consultation mechanism that enables him actually to benefit from not making decisions all alone, which is a very, very lonely business. And on a personal level, I think he is one of the most humane people that I've ever met. So you look him in the eye, one-to-one, and he's down to earth at the end of the day. He's here to serve the people, and he's here to make change for the citizens, all citizens of the state of Israel, Jewish and Arab, and secular and religious, and women and men, and Olim and Israelis.
Okay, let's just wrap it up, because we have to wrap it up. Let's
There's
give
a very
you one more
important
question.
here that
Okay.
wasn't answered by the previous Knesset member. Payments for New Olim were stopped due to no
So they were
government.
just started up again a few
Yeah.
days
So
ago.
if you don't
So
mind
if
answering.
anybody, I wanted her to answer, but I'm just explaining to the people
No payments
that
for Olim
that
should
were
ever be
writing
stopped.
to me in the last few weeks. The payments have started up again because they had the Knesset
There's no
met,
budget.
and
There's
there's
no
no budget.
There's no budget.
And I'll give you an example. I had I helped a recently released soldier a few days ago who had no food, and he was very embarrassed. He kept writing to me. He was supposed to get payments for being a soldier, sal klita, all these different things that he was supposed to get. 22-year-old kid from South America, and guess what? He had nothing, and he wrote me very humbly that he had no food. So basically, we got him food, and the thing is, it's terrible that we have to do this.
So first of all, this year-long election process, the state is in paralysis. There is no budget. Not just for New Olim, there's no budget. We're all over the country, and we're hearing the manifestations of the fact that there's actually no budget for outstanding payments that have to be made. And what I want to say about that is we have a week until the election, and the Israeli public actually has to understand that it's time to make a very clear decision in this election. And I meet a lot of indifference and a lot of people that have just had enough and say, oh, we can't stand it anymore, I'm not going to vote. That is, to me, the most important thing to realize, that if we want to make change, every vote counts. And if we want to make change, people have to go out and vote on election day. I'll say vote for the white,
Are you
but
afraid?
must
Are you
go out and
afraid
vote.
of people not showing up?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that there's a great sense of indifference and just exhaustion from this entire process.
Okay, so let's just wrap it up. What would you like to say as a closing to the audience out there?
I'd like to start with you and say
Okay.
that I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And
Thank you
along
very
with,
much.
along with, believe it or not, 40,000 organizations such as yourself that are effectively helping people every day, and in many, many ways taking the role of government that has been really in absentia, that has been dysfunctional not only for the last year is definitely paralysis, but before that, the executive branch of government has failed to create that long-term holistic plans that have affected all of the questions you've asked about, and many of the organizations such as yourself are picking up the slack. And it's time to make a change and have an executive branch of government that's working for all of the citizens of the state of Israel.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Could we take a selfie? Could we take a picture together?
Yes.
Wait, could,
Does anybody else want to be in it?
Yeah, could you?
Are we? Is this off?
No, it's still on.
It's all still on?
Well, we're all
Okay,
still on.
we're all
This
It's all
is
part of it?
our
Is that how it
production values here.
Say cheese. Cheese.
Wait, and then look at me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's
Michal,
really nice
I
to
wish
meet
you a lot of luck.
Thank you, thank you.
And
Really,
thank you for
amazing
coming.
All you do.
Thank you
Really,
so
really.
much.
Full of support.
Thanks. Next guest, get ready to rumble with one of the members of Otzmah Yehudit. And he will come in a second. So we have everybody's. Let me just, while they're changing people here and bringing him in, let me just tell you some upcoming stuff about KeepOlim. For Passover, don't you worry, because KeepOlim got you covered. In our No Alone program, for Passover, we matched 1,500 people up personally with warm, embracing families. We've matched 1,500 people in 4 years. So it doesn't matter what language you speak, whether you're Haredi or whether you're secular or part Jew or quarter Jew, we match you up to the proper home so you could have a friend for life. So next time, we don't have to match you up. You'll have a place to go on your own. So that's KeepOlim, and look forward to registration in a few weeks. While we is the next guest here?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's here.
Oh,
He's here.
oh, he's here. Wow.
How are you?
Good. I was running out of commercials. Hey, this is
Got plenty
David
of commercials.
Sidman.
Otzmah.
Come
Sidman.
sit down. Sidman, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The production values here are something. No. I'm joking. You know, we're a poor organization, and this is the best we could do. We have an Olim from every country helping out on staff today. We have 2 amazing camera people, Vladislav and Sammy. We have the amazing heroine of I think, I'm in awe by her. She's been my friend for the last couple of years, and I say Baruch Hashem. She just joined the board of KeepOlim, Miss Ann Pollard, and God willing, her former husband will come home soon, Bezrat Hashem. And sitting next to Ann Pollard from Mexico and Canada and America, she hit all of North America. Our board member Yafa Safadi, who's manning my Facebook. Okay, now we're ready to talk about Otzmah Yehudi. Now, I'm going to be totally straight up. Otzmah Yehudi, for those that don't know, is a party that is not in the Knesset now. They hope to be in the Knesset in a couple of weeks. They had, 80,000 votes last time? So they missed it by about 80,000 getting in the last. We keep doing this every few months, so maybe they'll get it right, next time. So, they are a right-wing party, and David is going to talk about that. And they have upset, some people are upset that we included them. And we had a meeting, myself and Zvika, and we decided we're not censors. If the election committee thought that they were a good party to run, who are me and Zvika? Y'all think that we're dictators, especially me, I'm a dictator. So we said, let them run, and I was so happy. Do you know most of the candidates that came here because of people in KeepOlim who convinced the party that they belong to twist their arms to send representatives. And in 4 out of the 6 cases, it was you guys in KeepOlim who belong to these parties who convinced the representatives to show up today. So, thank you for being here, Mr. David.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you're an Olet as well.
Yes.
Let's start off by knowing a little bit about you. Where are you
Okay.
from?
I am from a suburb of Boston called Brookline.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long you been
Very
here?
boring. I have been here for roughly 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're not you're
I'm not
once
that
an Olet,
fast.
always Olet, but
Yeah.
you speak Hebrew, you sprechen the
Yes.
Hebrew.
I do. Yes.
Okay. And now, David is not running for the Knesset. He is the spokesperson
The English
for
spokesperson.
the English spokesperson for Otzmah Yehudit. So, to be totally honest and fair, the first few people who were in the Knesset on the list of Otzmah Yehudit
Right.
apologized because their English is not so good, which is why they sent David instead. And so
Yeah.
now we know why you're here. So let's get down. So, why did you make Aliyah?
Because the recreation of the state of Israel is written in the Torah. It's part of the prophecy that God, when he dictated the Torah, when Moshe dictated the Torah, said would happen, that the Jewish people would ingather from the exiles from all corners of the earth. And when you see it happening before your eyes, and you're a Jew outside of Israel, I couldn't help but not want to be part of this prophecy that is happening right before us. So it's also a direct commandment from the Torah. So as a Torah observant Jew who cares about what God says, I believe it's an obligation for all Jews to move to Israel and make Aliyah.
Okay, but interesting. I read he has a website, and what's the website?
I am the editor of Breaking Israel News. That one? Or
No, your personal one, because this is where I got the information from.
It could be a blog from the
A
Times of
blog,
Israel. Yes.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple of things. Interestingly, said that you wanted all Jews to make Aliyah,
Yes.
but some people were very upset that we invited you, but I think differently. But on this thing here, you claim that only halakhic Jews should be eligible for citizenship, and the court system should be a Torah-based interpretation of the law. Is that
Yes.
this is you, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what would you do? We just talked about with the last guest from Blue and White that there are 500,000 Olim, more or less, who are part Jewish, 3/4 Jewish, 1/4 Jew, once went out with a Jew, married a Jew, and they're not, according to you, going to be eligible for full citizenship. The law of return was created based on Hitler, sad to say, that, if you were part Jewish under the Rosenberg laws, you were considered Jewish for Hitler. So Israel in the 1940s created this law of return, which states that if you have...
Right.
Now, I think it's a beautiful opportunity because the land needs people, and they have some connection. In my family, half my family is not Jewish. Both my parents are, but most of my cousins and my niece and nephew were not raised Jewish till they came to Israel, and they decided to be Jewish. And
When you say decided to be Jewish, they
they're
converted.
halakhic.
They're
my
halakhically
sister-
Jewish.
My sister's Jewish.
So then there's no problem.
But they live in a small town and they weren't exposed to anything Jewish.
No, that's a different.
So,
that's
but most of, I have relatives, I have Filipino relatives, black relatives, Asian
Are
relatives,
they halakhically
Latino.
Jewish?
Well, you would not consider them halakhically Jewish because their fathers are Jewish, but their mothers are not Jewish. But in America, don't forget, on Reform and conservative synagogues, they're Jewish.
Right. But
So here in Israel, because we don't have Reform and conservative that have any power or any authority, so they're not considered Jewish, which is why they have problems when they live here, and now we're up to 500,000 of them. In the last year of immigration, 30,000 people made Aliyah, of which about half were not considered Jewish according to halacha. So what would you do with these people?
well, I mean, first of all, the law of return, I believe, needs to be changed. I don't think that Israel should decide who's a Jew based on who Hitler decided was a Jew, because there's clear criteria according to halakha who is a Jew and who is not. So Israel had a choice: do we go by what the halakha says, or do we go by what Hitler says? And for some reason that I don't understand, Israel decided to go by what Hitler says is a Jew. And now we have a problem in Israel where religious Jews who go to synagogue in Haifa are getting jumped by non-Jewish skinheads who made Aliyah through the right of return with swastika tattoos on their arms.
Okay, but that was a case a few years ago, and I think the problem with that is
that's
that,
just one small example of a much bigger
I
problem.
understand, but I think a lot of people, when they come here and they think they're Jewish, especially the Russians, because they were called Zhid, dirty Jew in Russia, they had a passport that said Zhid on it, and they come here and they're told they're goys and shiksas and not Jewish and Nazis. You know, I'll give you an example. I had a Bulgarian soldier, one of the first Olim that I helped when we started KeepOlim. Okay? He was a very handsome kid. He called me crying. He was in one of the top army units. He was a fighter. His father lived here and he wanted a connection to his father. His mother was not Jewish. He came here and he was called the Nazi in the army by his pluga, his pluga mates. So basically we convinced him to put down the gun, to give it to his commander, and they switched him to being a jobnik. On the day after he left the army, he left Israel. And that's a person now that's bitter towards Jews. He is a person that I believe in kiruv. I believe in, that's what I did to my niece and nephew. I believe in kiruv, but apparently you don't.
I believe in kiruv of halachic Jews who are not religious. Now, if this young man, by the way, I do not condone anyone calling, even if they're not Jewish, someone volunteering to serve in the army a Nazi. I think, I would never call them that. But I will just say this. If someone who is not Jewish, who identifies as a Jew, wants to live in Israel, then the most logical solution for them is to convert according to halacha.
But you understand there's 400,000 people here. A lot of them do want to convert, and they're having lots of difficulties because the rabbis make it very hard for them to convert. The conversion courts are overwhelmed with people. They need to open more conversion courts. They need to, and a lot of people just, lose interest after a while. It's just like, the kid could join in the army, and there's an Ativ program in the army, so he'll become Jewish there. But let's go on to something else. I have a lot of questions from concerning the LGBT community, because I read on your website that why don't you explain it? A lot of people are saying about they want gay marriage and they believe in equal rights for gays, and so where does Otzmah and you stand on the gay issue? Because that's a big problem. I mean, a lot of people wrote me with questions about that.
I'll put it to you like this. Otzmah and myself, we're not against gay people as individuals. What we're against is a gay agenda that shoves their culture down our throats. So, for example, let me ask you this. Let's say there was a movement that promoted incest. How would that make you feel?
So you're comparing gays to incest people?
Why not? It's two consenting adults. Let's say
incest is not consenting adults.
Incest is a brother and a sister.
Yeah, but it could be a father or a mother with the kid, and that they go to jail. No,
forget kids. That. Let's say two adults. Incest.
Be clear here, because
incest. A brother and a sister want to have relationships, and then they start a movement of other brothers and sisters, adults, that want to have relationships.
Okay, but 10% of the population is gay or lesbian or transgender. So this is not like some crazy person that's having incest. This is.
But why is
loving people.
But we're talking. I'm sure they're loving people. I'm sure people who are incestuous are also loving people. But at a certain point, you have to decide as a society what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Meaning, the same way you probably don't want your tax shekels going to closing down the streets of Tel Aviv for an incest parade, and then you have to explain to your kid why brothers and sisters are making out on this parade. I don't want my tax shekels going to closing down streets so that the gays can have a very inappropriate, sexually suggestive parade. If you want to be gay, do it in your bedroom. There's no reason to turn
Right.
it into this
So
public
we've had
display.
So we've had 15 suicides and overdoses in KeepOlim in the last 4 years. 15 out of 40,000 people in my group. Now, a lot of them happen to be part of the LGBT community because people with like what you're saying is making them feel unwanted, unloved. You believe in conversion therapy, if I read your site correctly?
I mean, I don't know that much about it, but I think it should be given, if people want to give it a chance, then it should totally
But
be their
you know
right.
it's illegal in probably every state in America and legal in Israel.
Well, just because it's illegal doesn't necessarily mean it's morally wrong. But
Okay, so let's move on, because I guess we agree to disagree. But let's still talk. What's the difference between? Let's get to some politics here.
Totally.
What's the difference between Otzmah Yehudi and Yamina?
okay, so let's start off by what happened earlier this week. Earlier this week, Hamas fired rockets into Israel. Now, what was the IDF's response? The IDF, as it says in the headlines, hit Hamas targets in Gaza, which at first glance sounds great. But when you actually think about it, you notice no one was killed. And this really begs the question, what is going on? Every time Hamas fires rockets into Israel, Israel responds with one of their strikes, and yet none of these Hamas terrorists are killed. So this means there's only two options. Either one, Israel's F-35s are incapable of eliminating a couple of terrorists in pickup trucks, which I think we both realize is not the case. The other one is that the Israeli Defense Ministry actively refuses to kill those Hamas terrorists who are firing rockets into Israel. Now, this begs the question, and this always happens. They fire at us. The IDF literally bombs empty fields. It sounds crazy, but it's true. These strikes, these retaliatory strikes, they bomb empty fields. Now, this begs the question, how is it that the most right-wing defense minister in Israel doesn't even make the Hamas terrorists pay for the rockets they fire into Sderot? And how is it that before him, we had the second most right-wing defense minister Israel could ask for, and he had the exact same problem? The answer is one word: fear. Now, if you look in the Torah, in Deuteronomy 20, it says, when you go out to war, and you see that your horses and chariots and forces are larger than your own, do not fear, because I, Hashem, your God, am with you. Now, it's very important to understand that the power of fear. Fear is such an irrational thing that it can make a lion afraid of a mouse. And that's precisely the problem in Israel. In Israel, we have a lion, which is Israel, who is afraid of the Hamas mouse.
So I take it you're against the Trump peace treaty.
We are against the Trump peace treaty. But if I could just finish my point. The reason why Otzmah Yehudit will do what Yamina won't do is because we use that same Torah as our guiding light. And we are the only party who understands that the best way to stop terrorism is to kill terrorists. And we are the only party that acknowledges not only that the disengagement from Gaza was a mistake, but that the way to rectify that mistake is to go back into Gaza and put boots on the ground in the exact same places where those terrorists are firing rockets from. No other party is promoting this plan. And so if you ask me what we're going to do for Olim, it's the same thing we're going to do for all of Israel. We're going to keep you safe. We're going to make sure, if you give us the influence, we're going to make sure that not one more rocket reaches not Tel Aviv, not Ashkelon, not Sderot, because we use the Torah as our guiding light, and unfortunately, the leaders of today have completely forgotten that, even if they have kippas on their heads.
Okay, so what would you say to world opinion? Because obviously you are very strongly opinionated in what to do with the terrorists and the rockets and Gaza. So what would you say, how would Israel exist if the whole world starts to do an economic boycott against Israel? And we may win the war, but we lose the country, because if nobody buys our products or visits us, we're not going to exist.
So I consider that just fear mongering. I think it's, with all due respect, it's a conspiracy theory. I think that
What's the conspiracy theory?
that if we actually kill the terrorists, then all of a sudden the world will isolate us. First of all, do you really think Donald Trump cares if we kill these terrorists? I don't.
I'll have to
He
ask
doesn't.
him.
Yeah, okay. The guy who killed Soleimani and every other Iranian terrorist, he'll be the first one to applaud us if we kill these terrorists. It's that same fear. It's that same fear that you're experiencing right now. It's the fear of what will happen based on nothing.
Okay, so your party is very pro Kahana, or based on Mayor Kahana,
Yes.
the teachings. You also want to build the third temple.
Yes.
Anton is asking, what are you planning to do who live in Gaza?
That's a good question. Thank you, Anton. What would you say to that?
Okay, so first of all, we have to do everything we can to encourage their immigration. The best case scenario is that the Arabs leave Gaza on their own volition, and if that means that Israel will compensate them for leaving Gaza, then I think Israel should do that.
Okay, now what happens? So obviously you want to keep the West Bank, Judea, and Samaria as well.
Yes.
So what are you going to do with all the people there?
Same thing. We have to give them a few options. One is you leave Israel, and we will reimburse you financially.
And you think they're just going to leave on their own?
They already are. Many of them are emigrating without any sort of
Yeah, but you could
financial
say the
incentive.
same thing about Israelis. There's
You're right.
350,000
You're right.
Israelis in the city of Los Angeles.
You are right.
I was the spokesperson of the consulate, so I know this.
You are right, and one of the reasons they're leaving is precisely because of the lack of security that they experience because of these same Arabs in Judea and Samaria. So what I'm saying is, give them financial incentives to leave Judea and Samaria. Give them financial incentives to leave Gaza.
And what that doesn't work?
And you give them a choice. You say either you live here as a citizen without rights to vote in the general election, but all other basic human rights you have, except for the right to vote. And that's the only other option. You know, if you're against Israel, you can't coexist in Israel. It just won't work.
And what do you say to the Arabs that are citizens of Israel?
So that's a little bit trickier because they're already citizens. So, you know, ideally, Arab citizens who identify as Palestinians should leave. But I will admit it's much more complicated because they are already naturalized, as opposed to the ones in Judea and Samaria who are not citizens of Israel. But the Israeli Arabs who sympathize and commit terrorism are certainly a problem that need to be dealt with much more.
So what do you think of Yamina, who is going to come on in a few minutes?
Yeah, Jeremy also waiting.
Okay, so what do you think about Yamina? Like all the right-wing parties joined forces, and they left you out in the cold.
Yeah.
So what do you say?
Thanks for reminding us.
I'm I'm not the bearer of bad news.
No.
I'm just like,
it's
you
fine.
know.
I'm just messing with you. So what's the question? Yeah.
So the question is, are you guys upset that you're not included in the right-wing bloc or the right?
No, we're not upset that we're not included in the right-wing bloc. We're upset that some politicians went back on their word. Meaning, when you make a contract with someone, especially a rabbi, you expect them to be a man of his word. And unfortunately, that wasn't what happened. And you know, there was no notice given. It was a very backdoor deal. So we're not upset. We're not upset that we're not part of the bloc. The only person who loses out is the right wing constituency.
So would you join a blue and white government?
No.
So you would only join Bibi government?
Yes.
And if you think Bibi would ask you to be part of the government, like, all right. So you're about 80,000 votes short of getting into the election
if you go by what happened in the last
election. So how do you intend? So we're going to have to close this interview. So
Sure.
tell the Olim what you intend, how to get to 160,000 more or less to get into the Knesset.
I'll put it to you like this. If everyone votes for the same party they voted for last time, nothing's going to change. We're going to go right back to a deadlock. If The same people who voted for Yamina vote this time. The same people who voted last time for Likud vote again for Likud this time. And for that matter, blue and white and every other party. Nothing's going to change, and we're going to go into a fourth round of elections. The only way Israel can avoid a fourth round of elections is if enough people vote differently than they voted last time. And the only party that's close enough to passing the threshold that can tip the scale and actually form a right-wing government is Otzmah Yehudit.
Okay. Thank you very much for being
Thank
here,
you for
David.
having me.
Let me just take a picture with Mr. David, and then we'll be right back with Jeremy Saltan from the Yamina party, number 18 on the Yamina list.
How's it going?
This has been interesting.
Thank you very much for being
Thanks
here,
for
brother.
having me.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Jeremy,
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
Doing David
Very spiffy. Good luck.
Mr. Jeremy is dressed to the 9s and 10s, folks. My God. He looks like he's coming from a katana. Nice to meet you, brother. Come have a seat
Tel
up
Aviv
here.
style. We need to class it up here a bit, right?
So let's welcome Jeremy Saltan from the Yamina party. Yamina party is it's the bigger right-wing party that's led by Naftali Bennett. And you are number 18 on the list. But you're also an Olet yourself.
I am, yes.
So where are you from, brother?
I'm from Chicago.
Chicago in the house. And how come is Monatapo?
Well, I made Aliyah, as we like to call it, in 1995. So that was now 25 years ago.
Wow.
Right? I still know how to count. Right? My math's
Are
okay.
you past the age of 30 or you came as a kid?
Well, yes. I'm 35 years old, so I came at the age of 11. 11 and a half.
So you
yeah.
came with your family.
I came with my family.
And is your
I did not
family
go
still
as
here?
an 11-year-old on a plane.
Well, Nefesh B'Nefesh gets them younger and younger, you know?
Well, I know that now we have Nefesh B'Nefesh, but when I made Aliyah, actually there was no Nefesh B'Nefesh.
So you did
There-
it.
there was such
that
a
was
thing
the
as-
old days where you took 3-mile walks to school in the rain and the snow.
And it was uphill both ways.
And you had to take the ship
Both
to
ways.
Israel because there was no airlines.
Well,
you know?
we did bring our stuff on a ship. I mean, we did take the airplane. I don't know if people still do that. They called it a lift.
Yeah.
You put all of your stuff
Yeah,
on the
I
boat.
did
You
a lift. I
also.
did a lift.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the boat shows up like a month later. I don't really remember.
And then
why
you
we-
have to pay all the money at the port.
Oh,
yeah.
that's true. You find
Yeah.
out there's extra fees.
So
suddenly.
okay, so let's talk about you, Mr. Jeremy. Jeremy
Sure.
is a very interesting person because he writes for a few papers and he covers the Knesset, and you have a blog covering the Knesset, correct?
I'm in KnessetJeremy.com. I covered the Knesset for many years. Right now we deal with polls mostly, poll tracking. I also put out a polling average, poll
So
predictor.
what does the poll say that Yamina is doing if
Right,
the election's held today?
2 minutes before I walked in, the latest poll came out by Direct Politics. They have us at 8 seats in the last poll that just came out, literally less than 5 minutes
So
ago.
you got your work cut out, buddy, because you're number 18.
You
So
know-
let's see what we could do to get you up to 18 by our audience. Okay, so
we need
let's
all
convince them.
40,000 all 40,000
Exactly.
people,
Okay.
and all of their friends, and all of their friends, friends.
So
friends,
let's
friends.
talk about this. Are
Sure.
Olim important to Yamina?
Of course they are. Of course, it's not even a question. I mean, Naftali Bennett himself, he's a son of immigrants. For those of you who don't know, his parents, they were born and raised in California. And he himself has spent significant time in the States. Even after he left the Army, he spent time during part of his high-tech career in New York. Of course, there are a lot of other people on the list who have spent time here and there within the States. Matan Kahanu is number 5. At 3 months old, he did this with his family again, not, by himself.
Not on his own. Nefesh B'Nefesh didn't
he
send
went
him
to New York.
diapers with
No.
Nefesh B'Nefesh.
He went to New York and spent
Okay.
time as a kid over there as well. So definitely we have a lot of people who've spent time overseas, of course, also within the United States as well. But also there are other countries out there.
Okay.
Rabbi Eli Ben Dehan, who's number 15 on the list, he immigrated from Morocco You know, there are people who come from all over the.
So let's talk about your
planet.
party for a little bit. You know,
Sure.
your policies, and let us, Olim, get to know who Yamina is. Okay, I can't pronounce this. I'm trying my best to say Yamina. I keep saying your mama.
Okay.
It's a very
well,
hard. It's a very hard. I'm
so
slow.
I'll make it easier for you. Is it easier to say Yamin?
No, that's the name of the party,
No,
Yamina.
no, I know,
but
and
I'm
then
just
you just
saying.
add on the
Okay.
Yamina.
So all right. So Yamina is a right-wing party,
Mhm.
more to the right of Bibi or
Correct,
Likud.
yes.
So what do you think of the Trump, the $1 million Trump peace plan?
I like the carrots. I don't like the sticks.
What's wrong with the stick, and what's good about the carrots?
Well, you know, the good thing about the carrots is that I mean, who doesn't like carrots, right? I mean, you know, from Bugs Bunny onwards, it's always been a big thing. Look, this stuff when we're looking at being able to apply Israeli sovereignty to all of the Israeli settlements, if we're talking about also 30% of Judea and Samaria itself, of course, all of that is part of Area C. It's actually very much similar to the plan that Bennett put out 8 years ago within that plan. Of course, he asked to bring 60% of Judea and Samaria. Here it's only 30%, but it's a good start.
And what would
it's
you do
something
with the
that
Arabs
puts
that
us.
live there?
Well, you know, the Trump plan obviously has an idea of what it thinks should
Right,
happen.
but
But if
like,
you want to
okay,
ask
so-
about if
so
you want to ask
Bibi-
about the Bennett plan,
Yeah.
the Bennett plan that came out 8 years ago has its own idea of what should happen when it comes to final status. But the first step is, of course, being able to apply Israeli sovereignty on the areas where 100% of the Jews are living, which is where the settlements are.
Okay.
So that's carrots and that's good stuff. When it comes to the sticks, well, you know, I think most people don't like sticks, right? No one likes getting hit by a stick. It's not something that's so pleasant. There's things in that plan that are not so good. You know, and if you want, you can look at the macro side of it. You can look at the micro
Now,
side
Bibi
of it.
said today that he will not move, or the Arabs that live in the Triangle in the Galilee, that they're going to stay Israeli, and he rejects that part of the plan. Does
Yeah.
Yamina reject that part of the plan too? Or?
Yes, it's very simple. Look, to go ahead and strip Israeli citizens from their citizenship does not sound like the model of democracy that, you know, I believe in, or I think a majority of common sense people do believe. I understand that's a part of the plan that was pushed by Lieberman. I think one of the interesting things about the Trump plan is it took a little bit from each plan, right? The Trump plan took a little bit from the Bennett plan, took a little bit from the Lieberman plan, took a little bit from the various things we've seen in speeches that Netanyahu has floated. So it was the Lieberman plan actually to go ahead and take the areas of what's called the Triangle and the Wadi Ara Valley, which are, again, areas of 100% non-Jewish populations, whether it's Christian, Muslim, or otherwise, and transfer them to a future Palestinian state. But to go ahead and do so, that means to go ahead and to make them give up their citizenship,
Okay.
and that's something that we're against.
So here's a question from Jeremy Kutner.
Okay.
What are you going to do about, he says, there's 500,000 Israelis that are denied the basic right of civil marriage, of marrying in their country of Israel. So a lot of these are affecting a lot of Olim, because they're very upset that they have to, most of the 500,000 are Olim, mostly from Russia and Central America, as well as a lot from America too.
So, you know, the Yamina list is a collection of a number of parties. The party that I'm a part of, Yamina Chadash, has a different answer to that question than, for instance, some of the other parties and some of the other politicians.
So what's your answer?
That would
What's
go
Jeremy's
ahead.
answer?
Well, I'm saying I'd love to give Jeremy's answer, and I'd also love to give my own party's answer. But the honest thing to say is, because we're running as part of the Yamina Alliance, what the position is here that we're going to be running on a list. And when it comes to this and a lot of religion and state issues, we're going to have freedom of conscience. That means whatever questions such as this, which another Jeremy is asking, that's going to be decided for each MK by themselves. There's not going to be what we know as party discipline. So when you're asking all these
So
other
that's
questions
something
of what
different.
the,
So
right,
each person votes their choice.
So each person votes
Okay.
their choice.
So here's another question.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that question. Brian writes, why didn't Yamina condemn the racist attacks by the chief rabbi against Olim. And I guess what he means by against Olim was the Russian Olim, like a lot of them, because a lot of them are not halakhically Jewish. So I guess that's what their Brian means.
Many members of the list went ahead and spoke to that event. They didn't go ahead and say that they are outright condemning him, but they definitely asked him to take his words back. They asked him to also choose his words differently and better in the future. To go ahead and to take a person who's in a very high position within the government as a chief rabbi and to go ahead and say things that are insensitive to a lot of people is something that a majority of Israelis don't want to see. It has nothing to do with my party or any other party. They were unfortunate statements, and my party responded to it. Why did we not condemn it? We don't go around condemning every single time a government bureaucrat goes ahead and says something they shouldn't say. If we were to go ahead and do that, then wow, there would be no end to it. I know there are a lot of people that did condemn that specific instance, but I'd ask why they're not going ahead and condemning other government employees who've said other things that are very harmful. I'll tell you from a lot of friends I know in terms of their experience in Yisrael Pnim and the interior ministry, there are a lot of bureaucrats there that basically I hear the stories there. Those people should be condemned, based on the way that they've treated a lot of Olim.
So if
So
you
I'm saying the idea to go ahead and pick and choose who you're going to condemn.
If Yamina gets
it's
in,
not
what
a serious
ministries
issue.
would Yamina like?
Well, as you know right now,
Well,
the
besides
defense
all the
minister-
ministries, or
Well, yeah, of course. Who doesn't want all the ministries? But that's never happened, and I would be very surprised if we see that happen now. Right now, the defense minister is Naftali Bennett. He would like to keep that position. It's a pretty important position to be able to make sure that my children and everyone's children are safe. It's a very important one. We know that Ayelet Shaked would like to go back to the Justice Ministry, where she's done a lot to be able to change things, to make it more equal and even compared to where things been since the constitutional revolution of Aharon Barak in 1992. Right now, Betzalel Smotrich is the transportation minister. He'd like to stay there. And Rafi Peretz is the education minister, and he'd like to stay there. If we get a fifth ministry, which again would be great.
So give me the fifth
but let's be
ministry
honest, I
of your
just
choice.
told you the latest poll has us at 8 seats. I don't see that happening. Various things that have been talked about in the past has been what they call smaller. They call it smaller because of budgets, but there has been talk, whether it's immigration absorption, diaspora, those type of issues, which I'm sure talk a lot to a lot of the viewers, but also in general immigrants.
okay. So let's go to some questions about.
Fernando is not happy about his question not being answered
Okay.
previously about
answer
the
was
housing crisis and the high cost
oh,
of
so-
living.
Well, that wasn't to me.
That wasn't to him. Okay.
No, so are
Like
you
me.
willing to answer now?
So okay, so let's rephrase the question. Among Olim, it's very hard because, well, maybe you remember if your parents, because you were a kid back then, but when Olim come here to rent apartments or to buy, well, let's just talk about renting. You need guarantors,
Correct.
and they don't let your family abroad guarantee your apartment.
Yeah.
They don't have friends or family here. They read contracts that are in Hebrew, don't understand, and then the housing. Now we used to have, maybe when your parents came here 25 years ago, we had a Merkaz Klita,
Yes.
and today there's very few. They closed most of the Merkaz Klitas. They're
Yeah.
only for a few. Olim from poorer countries, let's say third world countries, or problematic Olim that need a little guidance, and basically they closed most of the Merkaz Klita. And for most of the Olim from the West, for instance, that's not even an option for them. If you're an Olim past the age of 30, that's not an option for you. And Lord knows I've passed the age of 30.
Oh, you look like a young guy.
Thank you. I remember,
Yeah.
I was around here many years ago,
Okay.
I was a waiter at Jesus' Last Supper.
Wow.
Wow, I remember
That was
because
a while
he
ago.
returned his
You look
food
pretty
4
good for a
times.
2,000-year-old
He
man,
returned the
guys.
food 4
Yes.
times. It was too salty, it was too cold. Anyone that doubts that he was Jewish, all I had to do was wait on the poor guy. So I'm
Wow.
joking.
Was he into pig? It's just something I was
No,
wondering.
it was kosher.
It was kosher back
It was
then.
kosher back then, yeah.
Okay. It's
There
interesting.
it was totally kosher. They had a heksher
Yeah.
and everything. You know?
It's amazing
It
how
was
things have
Manhattan.
changed. Yeah.
It was kosher
It was
Manhattan.
Mahadran, wow.
Mahadran, yeah.
That's the
So,
best
all
one.
right, so let's
I'm
talk
happy
about
to-
this.
I'm happy to answer that. I'm actually in a unique place to answer it because I can answer both parts of the question. One of the positions that I hold with the municipal government, I sit on the Planning and Building Committee that's called Harel, which is a regional planning and building committee in which we're in charge of planning and also building the various municipalities of Mevaseret Zion, where I live, Abu Ghosh, which is a non-Jewish town, and Telstone, Kiryat Yarim, which is an ultra-Orthodox. It's a Haredi area. So I deal with people coming with a lot of problems from all different segments of Israeli society. And on the other side of that, within the Mevaseret Zion city government, so I'm the deputy chairman of the Immigration Absorption Committee within Mevaseret Zion. And you're talking about absorption
They
centers.
closed down too.
So I was one of the people fighting against that. We were able to delay it for many years. For people who don't know, a lot of you might have gone through there. Mevaseret Zion Absorption Center was the largest, was the flagship of all absorption centers of the Jewish Agency. 1,300 spots. That's a lot. There were a lot of Olim that their introduction in Israeli society was to go ahead and come through us. So when I'm talking about housing, I'm talking both from the macro perspective of just in general, planning entire neighborhoods, down to being able to approve someone who wants to put a pool in his lawn if he's able to have
Okay.
enough money to do so, down to the level of Olim dealing with absorption center and the very hard thing of getting out of the absorption center. And as you mentioned, unfortunately, the policy that we've seen, there was by Sofa Landver, who's no longer in government, was to close them. I actually have back from my early parliamentary work a parliamentary question from 2010 in which I asked her, specifically a number of issues when it came to immigration absorption, and she said already then that it was her policy to close down. She wanted to pretty much privatize Aliyah. For again, someone who came before, Nefesh B'Nefesh,
Right.
and before we saw a lot of these private companies come forth and do a lot of good work that they're doing, I was very, very alarmed to see the stuff that she was doing. Then I saw it happen in my own hometown of Mevaseret. And what scares me about this, and I talked about this in a Knesset committee of immigration absorption, because they were closing it right at the time that you had the problem with France and Ukraine, which you had a lot of Jews coming here. I said, if you close the absorption centers, what you're saying is immigration, Aliyah, is only open to rich people. And if we don't
Okay.
have room for you, there's going to be a line. And the way that I understand Chok HaShvut, the law of return, which is one of the most important laws that the Israeli state ever legislated, which says if you're a Jew, wherever you are, again, it's enough to have a grandparent anywhere.
So you disagree
can
with
come here.
you disagree with
So-
Otzmah.
I disagree with Otzmah on a lot of things, but to answer, this particular question, what you have here is a situation which they try to go ahead and create a line to make Aliyah, which I think is just a violation of one of the most fundamental pillars of what it is that we believe here in the state of Israel, and that's that Jews should be able to make Aliyah and not wait until there's a spot in an absorption center because there's a person in government who wants to go ahead and sell it to make some money, whether it's for the pension group or just for the Jewish agency or wherever else. So that being said, what I found is that on the macro level, and I know this is cliche, but the more we're able to build, the lower the prices go. And the problem that we have with the monopoly of the land authority, in which you're not able to actually bring down prices, since the price of land is usually at least 50%, depending, of course, where you live, but usually about 50% if you're talking about the central areas of what the actual price is. If you're going to keep that monopoly and you're not going to break that up, it's going to be very difficult to go ahead and bring down the cost to be able to buy a house. In terms of the other half of that cost, what you can do, this is something Naftali Bennett did do when he was economy minister from 2013 to 2015, is to take the small little components and try to combat each one separately. One of the things was cement. There was a cement monopoly. You had one cement company. You could only buy cement in industrial sizes, and if you needed just a little bit more to finish your, house or do some work in your house, you weren't able to go ahead and do that. So again, what he was able to do is break that up. That's just one component.
Okay.
There's a lot of other components.
So
now,
let's
if you're talking about rent, which I think speaks to a lot of other people, are saying just like
It's
for the next
most
few
of the
years,
Olim. It's
right? They're
most of the
saying,
Olim.
Jeremy, that's great, but for the next 10 years, I'm not going to be able to put down any down payment for a mortgage. What can I do in terms of rent? So there are various interesting programs which have been discussed over the years at the government level, both the national government and the local government. The problem is that if we don't have a government like we have right now, you're not able to go ahead and do a lot. One of the ones that I really liked that we had a few years ago was to penalize people that took residential areas and used them for commercial use, such as, I'm sure you've seen this a lot, dentists, lawyers, people who are just saying they don't want to pay the extra tax, and it's a much higher tax for business. They don't want to pay the commercial tax, so they rent out residential areas and then they drive up the prices. So what we did is we went ahead and we put in place a lot of both monitoring methods, but also a lot of fines and punishment to be put in there to stop people from doing that. There was another group of people, which are people that are here 2 weeks out of the year. They're here maybe a week, 2 weeks, and they have completely empty apartments. And we went
ghost
forward.
apartments.
Yes, there's ghost neighborhoods in Jerusalem. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of them.
So let me just stop you here.
I just want to just 2 sentences on this because I think it's an important issue for a lot of people. It might be the most important issue. And what we did there was be able to put in, again, a series of carrots and sticks, if you will, to be able to make sure that there's an incentive for people to rent it out during the time that they're not there. A lot of times people are just looking for a place for 6 months. So what you need to go ahead and do is take some of the stuff as the one that I mentioned, which is something that really has shown to bring down the rental prices, continue with these programs, but on the macro level, you got to reform the land authority. You have to just build more than we're doing now. Supply and demand is not just something in a textbook. It's real. I've seen this in the committee. I've seen the numbers from year to year. When we build more, the prices do drop.
Okay.
That's what we have to do.
All right, let's go quickly now. Okay,
Sure.
because I want to ask a lot of questions. We ain't got that
Hey,
much
I'm here.
time.
You're the one who said I only
Okay.
have a half hour.
I know you are good. This guy is good. Like honestly, I don't know. We could do a poll after, but he is a great speaker. You may disagree with some of his politics, but man, this guy's a good speaker. Okay.
It helps being in government.
How do you feel?
should
What
ask him
is
to come
Yamina policy on marijuana? Like,
Wow. So I have to say, this campaign, that's the first time someone asked. I'll be honest, the first campaign,
thank
that's
you,
what,
Karen, for asking that
that's-
question.
That's, in the first campaign, that was every single event we did practically. Maybe not everyone, but just about everyone, they asked about that. So I can tell you what our position was on the first one. That's something that does not appear in our platform, so I can't give you an official
Okay.
Yamina answer to that, but what I can tell you is back when we were just Yamina Chadash, so the answer that we gave then was that we were going to look at various studies and see what the consensus would be in terms of what...
But even conservatives get stoned. Come on now. No, I'm joking.
I
am one
can
of the
tell you
people.
that
I am one of the
as-
people on
yes.
medical marijuana. I have.
That's totally legal.
It took me 2 years to
I'm
get.
sure
I
you have a
a
lot of friends. I found that
No,
people
everyone's
with
trying to
medical
be my
marijuana have a
friend,
lot of friends.
But I work with
That's what I
KeepOlim
found.
14 hours a day. I don't see anybody. They all knock on my door. I'm like, I'm not home. Go away.
Well,
so no, but it was
yeah.
very hard. I was very sick. It was very, very hard. It took me 2 years to get. I was addicted to opiates.
Mhm.
I almost died from the opiates. We've had a lot of Olim, sadly, pass because of drug abuse on the opiates. They passed them out like candy. I came here as an Ole, and a year later, I was addicted to opiates that the doctors gave me. I didn't find them in the street. I got them from my doctors. I went from a 100-kilo bodybuilder to 69 kilos. I couldn't get out of bed. I started KeepOlim from my bed. So I very sympathize with all my other people. We have cancer patients who are supposed to get 100 grams, and they jacked up the price under the reform. And there's no way they could pay 3,000 shekels a month for this stuff. They only make 8,000 shekels. So we have a huge problem in Israel with the cannabis industry. So thank you, Karen, for asking that question.
I can give you one quick sentence on that. When Ayala Shaked was Justice Minister, she, along with Gilad Ardan, did work to decriminalize. That doesn't make it legal, but she was one of the two ministers they were pushing to decriminalize it, which of course is
I have another question.
a step there.
Okay, now you're a young man,
Thank you.
but this question
feels
is on
good when I hear that.
ageism,
Yeah.
and a lot of Olim, especially the older Olim like me, who come here past the age of 40 or 50 or 60, and they can't find a job. Why can't they find a job? Because nobody wants to hire them. And I tell, as you know, I'm supposed to be a maven on Olim issues, so I tell them, start your own business, because the government gives you help. They have ma'ov.
Wow.
I tell them, start your own business, because that's the only way
You
you're
need
going
money
to
to start a business. I mean,
Yeah,
I can tell you my story is starting a business, and I started along with my partner David Klenik, the first comedy club in Jerusalem, which was also the first English comedy club
I
in
appeared
Israel.
there once. It was my 4th comedy show.
Wow.
I did there. And I got yelled at by your partner because he said, I'm known to be a dirty comic. And they're like, you cannot curse. You can't say darn. You can't say anything. You can't say heck. You can't say anything. And I did it without cursing.
Yeah, he
know?
has those rules till today. He has a new club now, and he still has those rules. But we had a club for 10 years, and I'll tell you, I remember going in and they were practically laughing at us because they're like, who are these two American guys who think that they can start a business? The guy told me, I was there at the office, registering it. He said, do you know that 70%, it was in Jerusalem, 70% of businesses in Jerusalem close within 3 years? And he's like, I'm not going to give you guys 1 year. You guys are going to be back here closing,
And how many years
fighting,
does
trying to
this
figure
now?
out who's going to deal with the debt. 10 years. I didn't stay around for all 10 years at the same level I was in the beginning. But I'll tell you, it is very difficult when you have to deal with the city, the police. Alcohol license isn't easy. The fire department. I remember the city. They had this thing. You have to have an air thing, but it can only be from the brand of Venta. And I'm like, why is there a kickback here? Like, I don't understand. It needs to be Venta. And they were like, you have to have a certain number of bathrooms based on the thing.
So
It's amazing.
Okay.
So
Let's wrap this up because
Okay.
Wait,
we're
one more
running out of
question.
time.
What about going back to opening up their businesses? What about their education plan? What about
Yes.
daycare being so expensive?
So I'll just connect that to education. I can tell you from the Immigration Absorption Committee I'm in, I can't tell you because I didn't do a poll on this, but for me, the number one thing that I've seen is that Olim are actually educated. Their problem is that their training or their certification is not recognized
Right.
here. And that's stuff that I've tried to promote for some time. There has been movement when it comes to certain countries, not all of the countries. But I think if we're able to go ahead and do that, that's a lot easier than being able to train everyone else. There are some issues. The Ethiopians, which are a community that's used to agricultural work, it's a lot more difficult for them within Israeli society. Again, it really depends where you come from, also where you're living. But to connect that to daycare also, if we look at the fact that today public school starts at the age of 3, when I moved here it was 5. I can tell you as a father of 3 kids, it's helpful that it starts at 3. I know there are a lot of people that want to go ahead and make it start earlier, perhaps already at 6 months. There are a lot of proposals out there, but to do that we have to pay for it. and to be able to pay for it, we need a functioning government. So I would say my pitch, is, try to pick good people, and please don't vote for these parties that are not passing the threshold. Please don't vote. Don't throw your vote away, with these parties that are protesting. Because if you have a protest vote in a third election, you're going to be responsible for sending us back to a fourth election. And the last thing I'll say on that is, please vote. I know a lot of people are saying, I don't want to vote. Obviously I want you to vote for Yamina. That's why I'm here. But you guys need to vote, because if you don't vote, we're just going to be in a very bad place. We need to show that our Israeli democracy is strong, that really whatever comes out, and it's going to be a mess of what comes out of this third election, but that it has a legitimate backbone that we can say that a good, substantial amount of Israelis have come out to vote. So it's very important that you guys go out and do so. But of course, I prefer that you vote Yamina, Tet Bet. And if you want to ask anything, if you didn't get your answer...
What's your website?
I told you what my website was before, but I'm going to give you an email which you can directly send me questions at, and that is newyaminanglos@gmail.com. That's again, newyaminanglos@gmail.com. Please send me your questions, and I want to thank you guys for listening to me and tuning in. And I'm sure thanks to all the other candidates that I didn't see, but I'm sure everyone did a good job. I know a lot of the names were going around. We're usually doing panels. This is cool to do a one-on-one interview. It's a little bit different than what we're doing.
Well, we try to be a little different.
Hopefully, we won't be doing this a fourth time. That's
Amen.
I think what the main
Amen
thing
to
is
that.
people feel.
So thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Jeremy. Coming up is Sharren Haskel, Likud Knesset member. Let's take a picture.
Sure.
Stand up. Thank you
Thanks.
very much, Mr. Jeremy.
Sure.
Take
Pleasure,
care, buddy.
man.
Pleasure meeting you.
Good stuff.
I heard a lot about you, talked to you, and now I meet the man. So
It's
I'm
my
very happy.
pleasure to meet you. I've
Thank
heard
you.
a lot of good stuff about you as well.
Hi, shalom. Welcome to Sharren Haskel, Chaver Knesset. Welcome.
Nice to meet
Please
you.
come sit down.
Thank you.
Saturday, I think, has been a bit on the elephant room. They said that it could be that they're...
Okay. How are you doing?
How are you? Shalom. Nice to meet you. So let's just, we have a belagon here. You know what a belagon is, Sharren? Okay, we have a belagon. Okay, so let's welcome you. You are a Knesset member, and you have a fascinating story. You are also an Olah Chadasha. And Vatika, once an Olah, we say here,
It's true.
always an Olah.
I mean, I grew up here in Israel. I moved to Israel when I was a year old from Canada. I was born in Canada.
And you're French Canadian.
No.
No, your
English
parents
Canadian.
are Moroccan, though, right?
My mom. My
Okay.
dad's Israeli, and my
Okay.
mom's Moroccan, but she grew up in France. So when we moved, when I was a year old, back here to Israel, she was an Olah Chadasha. And so we grew up at home with some of the difficulties and the challenges of an Olah Chadash. Especially if you can take like more than 30 years back, so you can only imagine how it was with the Ulpan and the Klita and everything. Back then, they told her that if she doesn't move into the Klita center, she will not receive Hebrew lessons and things like that. And she was with
Right.
2 children, pregnant with my sister as well. So it was really, really difficult. And so growing up with, language barriers and difficulties and things like
Okay,
that.
so let's talk about this. You are the youngest Knesset member. You are the baby of the Knesset.
Well, in the coalition, I think that Stav Shafir is a few months younger than me.
And you are married, and you speak
Yeah.
English, Hebrew, and French.
And French, yeah.
You do parlez-vous.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ma mère elle est française. My mom
I
is
don't
French.
I don't parlez-vous. I live in the French neighborhood of Tel Aviv, but I don't parlez-vous, and people just look at me, oh, American,
Yeah.
But that's the beauty part about Israel, because we're all Olim together,
Yeah.
and we all came here. We're all Am
Kibbutz
Yisrael,
Galuyot.
Kibbutz Galuyot. And so let's just get to know you a little bit before we ask you the hard questions, because you are from Likud, you are from the sitting party, and so a lot of people have a lot of questions for you. But let's just talk about you. You're very active on environmental and animal rights, which is something I think unique because Likud is more to the right, and there's not many right-wing politicians that are into like environmental and animal rights.
I won't say that. Most of the legislations that promoted animal welfare, environmental issues, especially in the last 10 years, came all from the right-wing parties, especially from the Likud party. Tal Gilboa, which is a huge Israeli activist on animal welfare, she's been appointed as the advisor to the Prime Minister on anything to do with animal issues.
Okay.
I've been vegetarian for more than 20 years. I'm vegan today.
I beat you.
I'm a veterinarian.
I beat you.
Really?
I started 42 years ago.
Oh,
I have not had
wow.
meat in 42 years.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
So I saw that about you, and I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, she may have my vote.
So I lived in Australia for more than 6 years. I've studied there. I'm a veterinary nurse. So I worked in an animal hospital. It's called Bondi Vet.
Okay.
Some of the Australian Olim might know it from the TV show in Australia as well. And I volunteered in an NGO that rescues injured wildlife, treat them, and then release them back into nature.
So, okay, why did you make Aliyah?
Why did I make Aliyah? Well, I did Aliyah when I was a year old
But then
with
you
my
left.
family. And then after my military service, I was a combat soldier in the military. I'm actually the first female Knesset member who served as a combat soldier in the military. Yeah, I'm very proud of that. And after my military service, I moved overseas. So I lived for a year actually in California, in LA.
Yes.
Yeah.
LA in the house.
And then I moved to Australia for 6 years, where I've studied and lived and everything. I decided to move because, especially when you take for a second a step back and you get to look on Israel from a little bit further out, not from this bubble, you get so many different realizations, especially about our history, about the incredible opportunity that we have here after thousands of years that we've been persecuted, and being at the mercy of rulers or politicians. And so we have the opportunity to be independent, to decide our own future. And this is extremely important. My grandparents fought for this country as well, for the independence. And it was very important for me to come and be part of that. So I actually left everything I had in Australia and packed everything and moved back here. I was actually, when you become a Knesset member, you're not allowed to hold any other citizenships. So I had to renounce my Canadian citizenship and my Australian citizenship.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So she is an Ole here to stay.
Yeah,
She ain't
not
going anywhere. She can't. She's here. She's Israeli. 100%
Yeah.
Me'achuz Israeli.
But
Okay.
it's mainly because
So,
this country is so special.
Let's talk about some of your things here. You're an advocate for. We just talked about this
Animal?
with the.
Yeah.
Animal medical cannabis,
Yep.
and I'm one of the patients.
Oh, wow.
So I suffer, with this reform, which is a big mess because we just talked about it. There are some Olim that get 100 grams a month because they have cancer and whatnot, and it's now costing thousands of shekels for them. They can't get the strains that they need. It's a big mess. So what do you have to say about this?
So 5 years ago, I built the medical cannabis lobby in the Knesset for the first time. They actually tried to move with this reform, which was far worse even than what we've passed now. From what we've passed, some of the clerks in the health office actually promised me that some of the issues there should have been solved when we've passed it. Unfortunately, we've seen now huge problems with the medical cannabis reform that passed. The Prime Minister is very well aware of that. We have already promised a completely different reform that should come after the election. It should have come, in the 21st Knesset, but unfortunately we went straight back into another elections and then straight into another elections. We do know that we need to make major changes in that. And we hope to build the next coalition, the next
Okay.
government, in order to deal with these
So
issues.
let's talk about some Olim issues. Okay. Bibi just announced a few days ago that he's bringing. We have 8,000 Ethiopians
Yeah.
that are still in Ethiopia. Most of them are Falish Mora, the Ethiopian community that converted under duress to Christianity a long time ago, but they stayed amongst themselves. And most of them have relatives, first, mother, son, father, brother, in Israel. And these families have been separated for 20 years. So why all of a sudden does Bibi want to bring them here now? Like, some of them have been waiting 20 years to immigrate.
Yeah, it's actually not just all the way in it's not just sudden. So for the last 3 years, Dudi Amsalem and Avram Nagosa have been working on that. There was an authorization about 2.5 years ago to bring 1,000 of them. They actually live in camps of the Sochnut Yehudit over there in Ethiopia. We had an authorization of bringing 1,000 of them here to Israel. I think it was about 7 months ago, Dudi Amsalem and Nagosa went to the Prime Minister to discuss with him because they promised 1,000 Ethiopians to come here to Israel. The Misrad Aliyah V'Aklita only brought about 600 or 650 Ethiopians here to
So
Israel.
that's why there's 400 spaces
Exactly.
now.
So
Okay.
these are the spaces that they actually
But why
didn't
not
bring
just
in.
bring the whole rest of the community?
So, it's a different aliyah to other aliyah, and so you have to make sure that you have housing for them, that you have proper courses for them, in order to live.
So, like, one
to
of
come in and be
one
part
of the
the
most
Jewish
active
community.
communities in KeepOlim. KeepOlim is 42,000 plus Olim from 100 countries. We're very diverse. Is the entire Bnei Menashe community that lives in Israel is part of KeepOlim. Bnei Menashes come from India,
Yeah.
and they have the same problem as the Ethiopians because there's 4,000 in Israel, and there's 7,000 waiting to immigrate in Manipur in India. And again, the families are split apart. They bring a few hundred a year, and why not just go in and bring them all together? They all want to come home. All these people, we discriminate against them because they're poor or their color. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying, like, why do they have to wait for years and years and years to immigrate when, an American or French or a Russian just fills out their form and comes, And they're poor too. Some of the people
Look,
that come from Hungary and
Absolutely, you're right, and it is more complex than just from what it is, because in order to, any Jew can actually use Chok HaShvut in order to come here to Israel. Some of them cannot prove their Judaism, therefore it's a little bit more problematic. And so there's the Jewish agency send special camps and programs there also to actually make sure that everyone that comes as Olim are Jewish or from a Jewish heritage. Obviously, there's a difficulty with some of the Plashmora or other ones that may have taken up Christianity or other religion or things like that. Some of them is definitely because of persecution, but that's why there's a more in-depth investigation into each and every case of it. It takes a little bit more time. We're trying to sort of untangle a lot of the omasim, how do you say omasim?
that's a new word for me.
Not the pressure, but the weight. Because,
The load.
Yeah.
Omes,
the load.
load.
Exactly.
We learned a new word today. Omes. Okay.
But we're in a process, and we look forward to continue and work with them. And bring them all
Joshua.
home.
So now I'm just going to questions by the Olim who are watching. Joshua writes, why did the Likud party of Netanyahu? When did it become the party of Netanyahu as opposed to the party of the people? This is from Joshua.
I think if there's one party that you can call it the party of the people, it would be the Likud party. The Likud party is the only democratic party that's left from all of our party. It means that it's not just one person who choose all the Knesset members. It is the members of the Likud party who go and vote for all of the Knesset members that we have. And so if we look on the People's Party, if you look, time after time, we get the confidence of the public because we have such a diverse community and people that are actually in our list. These are people who were voted by other people. And in the Likud party, what you say about the base of democracy, what is the most basic principle of democracy is that anyone can vote and anyone can be elected as well. And the Likud party, time after time, has proven that through the democratic process that we have in our party.
Now, you are one of the few Likud Knesset members that supported Sahar.
Yeah, this is a democratic process. We're allowed to have different opinions. We're allowed to challenge the chairmanship. We're allowed to challenge our seats in the Likud party as well.
So that was a good question, Joshua.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
Thank
democratic
you.
process,
Okay.
and we're very proud of it.
Let's go to Anton's question. How will Bibi run the country if he's spending all his day defending himself in court? Thank you, Anton, for writing that question.
So, Anton, I think that in the last 5 years, not just through running the government, but also going through very, very intense campaigning for the last year, we've seen Bibi, actually working like crazy. He's been managing our country, bringing us to new records on the diplomacy level, on our foreign affairs issues, on policies, on economy. We've had the record lowest of unemployment here in Israel. We see salaries keep on going up. And all of that during very difficult, yes, not, the best situation, but these were very difficult last 5 years. And even though that, he actually perfectly managed the country as well. So I definitely trust him to continue to do so.
So why should Olim vote for Likud?
Why should Olim vote for Likud? Well, first of all of the incredible things that we've done for the last 5 years that has pushed Israel to record highs on so many levels. Yes, I know there's still a lot of things that we have to fix and change and make better, but nothing happens in 1 minute. I think that if you want to continue to see Israel flourishing like that, you need to vote Likud. More so, in the past 4 years, we have been dealing with some issues as well of Olim. For example, I've been dealing a lot on the issues of licensing. So before, if we take 3 years back, Olim who would come here to Israel could drive for years with their license from abroad, so from America or from France or other countries.
KeepOlim is the one that helped my partner in KeepOlim, Svika Greiver, was the one that went to Katz and convinced him to change the conversion to make it easier for Olim.
So I'll tell you that I've been in touch with Katz. It's been a very long process. In the beginning, we've started doing it for the French Olim. We wanted a bilateral
Right, the French
agreement.
were first, and then we
wanted to do a bilateral agreement. Unfortunately, the French government refused to do this bilateral agreement. This is how all the countries do that, so they don't have to renew their license to get a new license with a theory, with everything, and with a driving test. After a lot of pressure we tried to put on the foreign ministry, on the parliament member as well, the Jewish parliament member, we weren't able to break through to the government. So what we did, the Likud, with Israel Katz, is actually just do an agreement, a one-sided agreement for our Olim to be able to come here and just receive this license
I went
as well.
personally, I went to Mishrad Rishui 10 times till I got my license.
When I got back from Australia, and I did my license here in Israel, but when I got back from Australia, I only had after 6 years my Australian license. And they wanted me to redo my tests again,
Right.
So it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm really glad we were able to do that. It actually reduced a lot of bureaucracy and heartache.
Okay, so this is
of
one
going
accomplishment for Likud.
Yeah.
We will give them 1 point. Ding.
But there's more. I mean,
So tell us.
whatever we did,
Hold on.
we did with the dentists. Okay, actually accepting their diplomacy
So
coming
that's
from.
wait. Let me stop you there for a second. This brings up this issue about Olim diplomas
professions
for
with
professionals
medical
being
issues,
recognized.
dentists. Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of we have a lot of questions about that.
So-
Because a lot of the first of all, a lot of the professions you have to take tests in Hebrew,
Mm-hmm.
and we asked this to the blue and white person also. So we'll ask you also. So a lot of professions, like a bus driver, you have to take it in Hebrew. And well, I'm Borba Haaretz. I lived here 5 years. I can't read or write. People are sending me texts right now in Hebrew. I don't know what the hell they're saying. So, you know, for me to take a test in Hebrew, I'd flunk it. Now you have a lot of Olim professionals, like therapists, that have to take a test in Hebrew, and a lot of the professions that actually have tests in the language of the Olim, the translation is so bad that nobody could read or understand the questions.
Let me give you even a more absurd story that we've had in the committee when we've actually passed some of the legislation to accept professional workers here in Israel, like doctors and dentists. We had someone coming from Argentina to do a specialist התמחות. How do you say it? Sorry, התמחות בבית חולים. It's like
Resident?
like a
You're
residency.
You have
A
6 Olim here
residency.
looking at you like, what the hell's she saying?
So a doctor, I think it was from Argentina, came to Israel to do residency here. I think it was for 3 years to learn how to do brain surgery. He worked in a hospital, did brain surgery, did his residency here in Israel. He met a beautiful Israeli, they got married, and he converted for her from Christianity to Judaism.
Okay.
He did his aliyah as a Jew, and once he received his certificate of Judaism, of conversion, he wasn't allowed to work anymore at the same hospital that he's been working for years. And this is because of tons of bureaucracy and
So is
regulations.
Likud cleaning this up?
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
So we've been doing that for the past 3
Because
years.
some
I've
of
got
my
legislations
Olim
about
need
it.
to go to work. You know what I'm saying?
And more so, Olim that comes with such an important profession that we need here in Israel, like doctors, like dentists, like therapists. It's really important that we give them the tool to be successful
See,
here in
my
Israel
chair
as well.
just fell down
Yeah.
listening to you. Okay. Well, you know, she's a powerful lady, and she's so young. So I just bent down. No,
Anton has a
this is the
question.
quality of our broadcast here today. My chair breaking, the camera breaking. Okay, the question that was passed to me was, ask her about why I haven't received my recognition officially. Oh, that's your question.
That's my question.
Okay, so this is a question from, I think, a hero. This is Ann Pollard, and Jonathan Pollard's ex-wife, and she went to jail with Jonathan Pollard, and so she's asked. She's on the board of KeepOlim, and she's a personal hero of mine, and so she's asking.
She's a personal hero of most Israelis.
Amen to that. So she wants to know why she hasn't received her official recognition of being a prisoner of Zion
And military rights.
and military rights.
Officially.
I
Which has
don't.
to come from Bibi himself.
So I don't know the exact case, but I'd love to take, from you some letters, some notes on where it is, what happened with it, because I don't want to give an answer where I don't know the details. I like to, give proper answers. So I would love to take some of these details and take it with me to the Prime Minister
That
or
would be
to the
beautiful.
office
That would be
and try and
amazing.
help out as well.
I would be
That-
very
that
grateful.
Yeah,
would-
definitely.
Thank you.
And matter of fact, any Olim, that comes to you and have any issues, I'll be more than happy to try and assist. I can't solve anything, but I can at least try and help
Okay,
them.
then we have
Yeah,
an address to turn to.
absolutely.
We will hold your pedal
I
to the
have a
metal.
question.
Miss
Yes.
Shaffa over
So
here.
we know recently Mr. Netanyahu went all the way to Russia to pick up this Nama from Russia. Are we planning to do something about our 2 soldiers that are still in Gaza? Being a mother of 2 soldiers that are in the military service now, I don't know how these mothers do it. Are we planning
So
anything?
what are we
What
do-
are we
what
doing? What
to
is he
free
doing?
Magustu?
It's heartbreaking. It's a very, very difficult situation. Everything is happening in secret channeling. So these are issues that we cannot discuss. I addressed this a couple of times to the Prime Minister. I've spoken to the families as well. We have to make sure that we bring them back as soon as possible. But as I said, this is a very complex, it needs to keep and stay secretly. And I really, really hope we'll see a progress soon.
So that's it? We're just leaving them there till...
No, absolutely not. They're in our thoughts and our hearts constantly. We will not stop pushing in order to bring them back. But we cannot disclose issues that are happening, publicly. We're not allowed to.
Anton has another question. Israel is the 6th most expensive country in the world. Is Likud planning to do something about it?
Absolutely, all the time. The only way to reduce prices is by reducing this terrible bureaucracy and regulations that we have here. This is one of the most difficult places to do businesses. The Prime Minister has taken upon himself to be the chairman of a committee. It's not a committee exactly, but it's like a government committee, so it's a little bit different, where they're actually reducing the bureaucracy. I think it was about 8 months ago, they brought out a book with 500 pages just to reduce bureaucracy and regulations. We started advancing in the meter of the easiness of making business as well. So we're starting climbing a little bit up. It's a little bit comforting, but it's not enough, obviously. We need to remember as well, we need to open the markets to more importations as well. There's a lot of lobbies, a lot of people who don't want to see it. For example, yesterday we had a strike in Machon Tkanim. It's like the FDA approval, but the Israeli one that approves them. So they've gone on strike as well. We're trying to create a competition to another one that will be able to provide approval of things as well. One of the major problems is that a lot of the unions are controlling a lot of these things, a lot of these industries, the ports, to bring in products, to get out products and things like that, and that creates a cost of living as well on us. Not even starting to talk about certain taxes that we put on small businesses, independents, and things like that. We're committed to continue and reduce that, reduce the bureaucracy, reduce the taxes. The Prime Minister is constantly talking about it, and I hope that we'll be able to continue in the next 4 years. I have to say, though, that the other option, Gantz option, and just like last week when he spoken to someone who said, someone in the crowd came with a question to Gantz saying, we don't want an open market, we want a closed market, otherwise all of us are going to bankrupt, which is absolutely not true, but Gantz actually told him that he agrees with him. Not only that, Gantz actually promised Avi Nissan-Cohen, who's the head of the union, the position of the Minister of Treasury of Israel, which will actually give so much more power to those unions who are trying to manipulate and stop those reforms we are trying to do to break those monopolies and create more competition. So, obviously, we have a lot of more work to do. It goes in a slow process. But if anyone wants to reduce the prices, they need to vote Likud, Michal, because the other option, Gantz and Nissan-Cohen, will only take us about 10 years backwards.
Okay. Would Likud, I'm asking you a question now, would Likud sit under like a unity government led by Gantz?
For me,
let's say Gantz gets 10 more seats than Likud. I mean, right now it looks like we're going to election number 4. But before we even 3 happens, well, let's just say Gantz, I don't know, maybe the blue and white candidate Michal was so good tonight that she just got 10 more votes for blue and white. So would Likud sit under a blue and white government?
I'll tell you this, for me it will be very, very difficult to sit in a unity government because we have huge differences on the issues of economy and on the issues of the Israeli-Palestinian issues as well. So it will be very, very difficult. Staying with that, I trust the Prime Minister as the leader of my party, and he actually wanted to form a unity government before. The problem is that Benny Gantz and the chairmen of his party, so him, Yair Lapid, Ashkenazi, and Yalon, refuse to sit with Prime Minister
Well,
Netanyahu.
you all have conditions to sit with each other.
No. Prime Minister Netanyahu have gone so far to even give, he went out and saying, you know what, I'm going to sit for the first 6 months, and then Benny Gantz is going to sit for 2 years, and then after 2 years, I'm going to take another year and a half. I mean, this is major compromises that we're willing to do.
Okay.
Hold on, just last
please.
sentence. Benny Gantz didn't refuse that because of the, issues of positions, because of ideological issues, because of the health, because of education, because of security. The only reason why he refused this proposition was because he refused to sit with Prime Minister Netanyahu. No ideology, no ideas, no compromises. And so even if Prime Minister Netanyahu would give him the first term, he would refuse that as well because he refused to sit with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And so unfortunately, I don't believe we'll be able to see a unity government like that.
So chances are we'll have the fourth election.
Well, I hope that the Israeli public will vote for the major parties and put aside the small parties and will make a clear decision whether they want the right to rule or the left to rule. As long as they continue to vote for those small parties, we'll continue to do it. It's a major issue, but if the Israeli public is sick and tired from going time after time to more elections, vote for the major parties and make the decision.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Bibi is under indictment. Apparently, 2 weeks after the election, they start the trials. How much do you think that affects people voting for Likud?
How much it affects? And I think we've seen it in the last 2 elections as well. I mean, everything was already in the air. The campaign of Blue and White is just a campaign doing on those accusations as well. And you see that the Israeli public really, and you know what, it actually turned to this thing that it's the public who will choose their leader and not anyone else. You cannot indict a sitting prime minister just on accusation. Anyone in Israel, any citizen, and definitely a prime minister as well, is innocent until proven in court. Not the media, not a leader of another party, nothing like that. It is the public who will vote their leaders, and anyone, including a prime minister, will only be accused in court by a judge.
Okay, what would you say to the audience, because we have to close it, what would you say to the audience why they should vote Likud?
Why they should vote Likud. So I think I've sort of summed it up a little bit, but we've brought a record high on issues like our economy, on foreign policy as well, on security in our regions as well, especially anything to do with Iran and the challenges that we have in our northern border with Syria and Lebanon as well. I think the public is seeing that we are actually flourishing in the last 10 years. There's still a lot of things that we have to do in order to correct. And in order to do that, I call them all to vote for the Likud party.
Sharren, thank you for being here.
It is
Can
my
we have a
pleasure.
picture? She's not only beautiful, she is so smart. I'm so honored to be here with her.
you.
As my chair just sank here. Stand up.
It was a pleasure to be here. And thank you all so much for all the incredible work that you do for our Olim.
Thank you. Now I have an address to turn to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You got my phone number, and so please stay in
I
touch.
will. I
Great,
will
and
hold
thank
you.
you.
I will hold you to the pedal to the metal.
And try me.
I will.
Yeah.
I think you really do care. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
very much.
Nice meeting
Pleasure
you.
to meet
Take
you.
care. Good luck.
Thank you. Toda raba.
So that was Sharren Haskel, Knesset member, and she is number 30 on the Likud list for the new election. She's definitely will be in the new Knesset because she's in a good position. Do we have? Okay. And last but not least, the people that got me Avodah, Gesher, and Meretz. So welcome to the studio, Haggai,
No,
And-
Josh will talk with you, because he have a wonderful story. הוא חבר של הנהלת מרץ,
Okay.
הוא ילד על הרצף האוטיסטי, שהפך להיות חבר הנהלה. הוא
He's
מדבר.
my friend, brother.
Yeah,
so
Well, both of you
Well,
could sit
why
down.
don't you come and sit with me? Could
Yeah.
I have a new chair?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
chair just kind of.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I kind of just fell.
Come, Haggai,
So-
come sit with
לא,
us.
לא צריך, לא צריך.
No, Haggai, come.
לא צריך.
All right. So sit over here, Josh, because the camera's here.
אני העוזר של ג'וש.
Okay. So we have a change in guest. Haggai is here, but he wants Josh Aronson to speak on his behalf. So and to tell his story.
Yeah.
So this is from the Labor, Gesher, and Meretz party. They three parties. They all merged. The three parties on the left, and they're running in the Knesset as well. Now, Josh is an Oleh himself, and he has a fascinating story because Josh was born in England to a Haredi family, and you're one of what, 14 brothers?
I'm the 17th of 14, so I have middle child syndrome. My
Wow.
father's a rabbi, so I have rabbi's child syndrome, and I'm on the autism spectrum. Basically, I'm messed up.
So, you're not messed up, brother. Josh is a reporter. Josh writes in Hebrew and English. Now, I've been here 5 years. I'm still illiterate. I'm bor ba'am ha'aretz.
But
And
Liam,
Josh
what you've done
writes,
for the Olim, you've done a lot for the Olim. You're not illiterate, because what you have done, what you accomplished for KeepOlim and for
Thank you, but-
every Olim that comes here, they know that they have a helping hand.
this guy
because of
writes
that
for
Liam.
Ma'ariv in Hebrew. So all the Olim, like me, who say we can't even learn Hebrew, this guy writes for Ma'ariv. He actually writes in newspapers in Hebrew. It's amazing.
Because if you work hard, you can do everything, and that's what the accomplishment of everything in lifestyle and in this country. It's just pushing
So
forward.
let's talk about you. How many years you been here?
I've been 15 years. in
15 years. And how old are you, bro?
Israel. 33.
33. And is there a minimum age to be in the Knesset?
Then I think it's 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So hopefully maybe next election.
I'm definitely now in the management team of the Meretz party, so hopefully I'll get up to one day push for the values that I'm pushing forward.
So let's talk about we'll call it Labor, Gesher, Meretz, the union. Let's talk why should an Olim vote for Meretz, Labor, Gesher?
Labor Gesher Meretz is a party that has decided enough of their for baby, against baby. At this moment, there's one thing that's important. There's the point that of their people, there's so many problems, whether it's the hospitals, whether it's the disabled people, whether it's the Olim. There's so many issues that are not being taken care of. And this party is actually a party of three values. You have labor, which is center, you have Gesher, which is right, and Meretz, which is left, all together for one value, to be there for everyone, to change the perception, to change that the country can get the help that is needed, that the disabled can get the help.
So
that the Olim
let's
can
talk
get the
about
help.
this. Let's talk about you for a few minutes. We mentioned before that you were born to a Hasidic family.
Not Hasidic, but I was
Ultra-Orthodox.
ultra-Orthodox.
Okay.
Yes.
And you left that lifestyle, correct?
Yeah, I'm now Reform. I work for the Reform movement as a disability coordinator as well.
Now, how you very open about your autism or your autism spectrum?
Definitely.
And how do you, like, as a Oleh who's autistic, how do you see Israel? Like, is Israel behind England in dealing with people like you and other disabled people? Are they ahead of the game, or is Israel behind? Because like I see streets that Olim, that people in wheelchairs can't even go up, navigate. So I see Israel like and a lot of aspects for the disabled as being years behind America.
Just before, while we were waiting for the interview, I said to Sharren Haskel, I said, if someone with disability wants to go from Tel Aviv to Haifa, he has to have a private minivan, because the buses do not have the international buses do not have a disability ramp.
Yeah.
They have to go
The new railway station in Jerusalem, it's like down 10 escalators, and I honestly have never. I'm 50 something years old. I have never seen escalators as deep and long, and I went with you once.
Yeah.
There are
crazy.
elevators, but it's at least 2 or 3 elevators just to get down from the bottom to the top.
And this is a new station.
My
They
father
should
used
be.
to have this problem all the time, that he couldn't get on certain buses. That he, in fact, even the sidewalks are not made in such a way that you can move one of these, a wheelchair, or move an agala. You know, if you're a senior citizen.
So do you think is Israel behind, or
Israel
would
is
you-
definitely behind on that. They are working on it. There are several organizations working, but it's the funding. There's no funding for
I mean,
disability.
sadly, because of the wars and the terrorism, we have a lot of disabled people here, probably more per population than in other countries, because a lot of them are due to war and terrorism and stuff like that. So you would think Israel would be more attuned to solving
to
these
helping
problems.
people with disability. But unfortunately, if you think disabled people, they have 3,200 shekel is the disability allowance. Now, think of it, they have to pay rent, they have to pay food, they have to pay medicine, and of course the private buses. They don't have that money. They don't have.
So how do
the
they
funding.
live?
They don't. They live in poverty, or their families support them. But there's a lot of them that live in very, very dismal states.
All right, so let's talk about some of the issues. Labor. I'm so confused. Labor Gesher Meretz. Okay, Labor Gesher Meretz is more of a social party,
Yeah.
and they care more about social issues.
Definitely.
So basically, let's talk about the LGBT community for a second, because we had some questions before. What would you do? What is the policy towards the LGBT community?
Well, we've always had an open home for the LGBTQ community. Our head of the party, Nitzan Horowitz, is from the gay community. We want to have open marriage. We want to have that surrogacy is also allowed for the male members. We want that they'll be able to have children, and their children are accepted to both partners, which in Israel, unfortunately,
So how would we have 500,000 Olim who are not considered Jewish according to Orthodox Judaism. They may be Jewish according to conservative or Reform, or they're part Jewish or whatever. So, but sadly, or maybe not sadly for some people, depending upon your perspective, they can't get married here. They have to go abroad. They can't get buried in a Jewish cemetery with their husband or wife or spouse or whatever. So what would you do to talk to them to get their vote?
So we're fighting for separation of state and religion. The Rabbanot has taken a monopoly on the Israeli society, and the fact, if you remove the state and religion, like you have in the USA or in England, for example, so if someone wants to get married through the Rabbanot, so they can get married through the Rabbanot, but if they want to get married through a civil agreement, happy days.
And so the religious would probably consider your party to be anti-religious.
They very much consider us to be anti-religious, but as I've said so many times, that our party is a pluralistic party. I don't care that they go to the mikvah and they go and do all their prayers and have Shabbat, but let me have my way of life. Let me live the way that we want to live. And that is the ideals of our party, is live your life.
So you
But
would
that
open
has to
the, so the party list would open the stores on Shabbat.
We would open the stores on Shabbat.
All
but
stores
obviously-
or just specific?
Anyone can decide on their own whether they want to open their store. It's up to the store owner whether he
But
wants
wouldn't
to
that
open
be
the store.
forcing employees to work on Shabbat?
There could be different laws on that, if like the laws of equality and religion in the UK. That the fact is that if someone does not want to work on Shabbat because of his religion state, they have.
So you don't think that would lead to me and Vladislav applying for the same job, and I'm religious and Vladislav is not, and they're going to give it, because that happens a lot in hotels, because the hotels in Tel Aviv, and we have some employees here that worked in hotels, and they're forced to work on Saturdays, or they don't get hired, because people that just say, oh, sorry, we hired somebody else, and they're religious, and
But if there is a law on discriminatory against employees not accepting someone on religion, then you and Vladislav can apply for the same job. But if they accept Vladislav because he would work on Shabbat and you wouldn't, you could sue the company for not accepting you because the same way as you can do in
it's
England.
very hard to sue in Israel. You have to put up the money. You have to put up 2 or 3% ahead
Which
of time.
this is one of the
and for
things
some
that we
poor-
want to do is
and so
open
for
up
poor
the
Olim, if I'm suing you for 100,000 shekels, I have to put up a few thousand shekels. Now I have barely enough money for food, for rent, for whatever. So it makes it very hard to sue here.
There's
because
a
you need to put up the
surplus
money.
of lawyers here, and I'm sure that if we give better
I don't know any
lifestyle,
lawyers. I don't know any lawyers.
well, it's strange that you don't know any lawyers, especially because I think your partner in KeepOlim.
Yeah, my partner is a lawyer. Yeah. My partner in KeepOlim.
Do you think the Rabbanut is corrupt?
I wouldn't say they're all corrupt, because I know people in the Rabbanut that are trying to make a change from inside the Rabbanut itself. I think that
But we just had a big rabbi being arrested for having, what's his name again?
Berland.
Yeah.
Rabbi Berland.
He has
Rabbi
like
Berland
50 million.
Rabbi Berland, in my eyes, doesn't represent rabbi. I think
50
that-
million
that you
shekel
have
and giving
some
mentos.
you have some rabbis that are good and some rabbis that are not good. But unfortunately, there's a lot of publication when the non-good is out that people overshadow the good ones. I'm very close to a rabbi in Jerusalem, even though I'm Reform. There's an Orthodox rabbi in Jerusalem that I would sit almost every day for hours on, and he's one of my closest advisors and one of the people that I know that I can trust with my darkest secret. There are people that I know that they work hard to change perceptions. Like there's a Rabbi Ole Chuck Davidson that does amazing work for the marriage outside the Rabbanut, and there's so many rabbis that are trying to do good, like the Rabbi Oppenheim that just was publicized that's fighting for JCW, Jewish Community Watch.
Right, there's a big report about it that CBS
So-
came out about it.
So
harboring-
let's explain to the audience, because maybe everybody doesn't know.
Right.
Yesterday, CBS News in America, one of the biggest news in America channels, did a 10-minute investigative report on Olim, American Olim, who are pedophiles who make aliyah to Israel. And it's not just one or two. It's embarrassingly to say there are dozens, maybe almost 100 American pedophiles that made aliyah in the last 10, 15 years to escape justice in America. And they forge their identities, or they just go deep undercover into their communities, and they're molesting Israeli kids, because usually pedophiles don't stop. And here we have Leifer, whatever, Malka, right? And I'm not going to be political. I think Makshimo, I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is an embarrassment on the state of Israel. She needs to be deported to Australia so she could face trial and go to jail and face her crimes, because what she did was molest tons of Orthodox girls. And they ruined
if we're
people's
here,
lives.
I must say, right, just that if anyone from the president's office is watching, please let the victims meet with the president when he's in Australia. It means so much to the victims. There's been so many calls out for the president to meet with the victims. And
now you were in the media a few weeks ago, because we had, unfortunately, last month, 2 more Olim committed suicide. There were 2 girls that committed suicide together. Josh happened to be friends
with one of them. I've lost 4 friends of mine in the last year from suicide.
But in this case, one of the girls was molested, correct?
Yeah. Unfortunately, she was molested by a family member, and she wasn't given. She was given treatment, psychiatric treatment, and she was asked to stop it by a family, which made it hard on her. But the whole issue on both pedophilias in Israel and the suicide in Israel is an issue that's very, very dear to my heart, and I've brought it up so many times with members of the Knesset who have written about it. For example, about the last few suicides, Ilan Gilon has written letters to the Ministry of Health, who just blatantly ignored him.
We have Iran. The suicide hotline of Israel is run by an amazing man. I sat with him. I spent a day at his office in Netanya. But unfortunately, they only speak Arabic and Hebrew. And 40% of the suicides in Israel are Olim Chadashim. 40%. And there's no one to speak their language. So in KeepOlim, I shared my story. People started to call. 180 people have called us in suicidal or distress modes, and we've been able to help them. And that's just insane, because we need a professional mental health hotline that's run by professionals, not by Liami and his volunteer staff of doctors.
First of all, what I have to say here, that Liami, the way you've been supporting the Olim with the countless, and I know that there's been thousands and thousands of Olim that have turned to you and said, Liami, I need help, and Liami was the one that helped. Haggai, I know that Haggai, who's just joined us here, Haggai will fight for these issues, because Haggai himself comes from abused home. Haggai was Let me say one sentence, please, and
Okay.
for the end of your interview.
Okay.
My name is Haggai. I'm the former general manager of construction and housing ministry, and now I'm the general director of Gesher, of Orly Levi Abuxis, together with Meretz of Mitzah Northitz and Avoda, the Labour Party of Amir Peretz. And first of all, I just saw Josh and his story, and so amazing. Me and Josh together, we have some parts are very same, because I was an abused child. I grew up in Jerusalem, very important and very special case, and I have luck because me and another 20 children goes out by court to kibbutz in the Negev, and all this project was not so well, and I stay alone in Revivim, and I was the secretary of my kibbutz and the general manager of the regional council for Ramat Negev, and also the general manager of the Ministry of Construction and Housing in Israel. And me and Josh, we have lucky or abilities maybe, but lucky and abilities, it's not state, and we need that the state take every children, no matters where he lives, and no matters what is base, and the work of the country is to take every children and give him the opportunity, and this is what we're going to do together with Avoda, Gesher, and Meretz. And thank you, Josh, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It was very nice, and I hope all of you will come and elect Emet Bakalpi.
So, Haggai, Reznik, I just want to, since you're sitting here, let's just spend 30 seconds, because you were supposed to be here at 30 seconds. You know, you're an author, you ran, what my Olim want to know is, like, you ran Misrad Benui, okay? This the housing ministry, this dude here ran. And a lot of Olim, we've talked about it with the other guest here, the housing problems of Olim, and it would be very neglectful if I just ignored that, because you're the head Jew in charge, if you will, of the housing ministry. You were. So we have a lot of Olim who have problems because you canceled, not you, the government canceled basically Merkaz Klita, and now everyone just comes here and they're on their own, willy-nilly. It's hard for them to sign contracts to apartments because there's no guarantors. They're not allowed to use family members abroad. They ain't got friends here. There's no friends. It's how do they sign contracts? And that's when the first thing, and apartments are so expensive. Why? Because there's a lot of ghost apartments. Just walk around the streets of Tel Aviv. You have apartments that were bought by investors, which is fine, in France and Russia, America, wherever. Madonna has an apartment. The Kardashians have an apartment. You know, about 100 Olim could fit into Kim Kardashian's apartment. You know, so what do you see an improvement in Misrad Benui towards these things? Because Olim are suffering. We have, why we're called KeepOlim, it's because so many of us leave. We just want to keep the Olim here.
So I'll tell you. First of all, I think to bring the Olim good apartments here in Israel, it's the first mission. And I wrote a big program, and I go out from the ministry, from the general manager. I came to the politics, because in the politics you can say the government, if I'm going in, if I'm sitting with you, there's some programs we must to take and to make them on. And I wrote 2 programs. One of them called leasing to the apartment, Dira leasing,
Okay.
apartment leasing.
and because the country is the ownership of the earth, the ground, the Olim can rent just the house in fixed price for 10 years, cheapest price, and after 10 years, they can also, if they hear
Well, that's
more,
the way it used to be many years ago. The Olim
start-
came here 30 years
course,
ago.
of
The
course,
Russians came here in the
of
70s.
course,
The
of
Americans
course,
came here in
of
the
course.
70s. And you had,
Of course.
I can't say the quality of the apartments were nice because they all collapsed, a lot of them.
But there was
they,
apartments.
But they had an
There was
apartment.
apartments, of
Okay,
course.
it's not Beverly Hills, but at least you had an apartment.
Of course.
It may have leaks, it may have walls that collapse, but Baruch Hashem, you have a roof. And we don't have that
you
now.
must social housing. You must social
So,
housing as
we
a
ha-
country, and we have a big program. And I call all the Olim to get into our website and look our programs and see that we're taking care not just about the housing, also the education, and also the welfare, and all these things together.
Everything.
So I have a question here that somebody just wrote. Will Labor Gesher Meretz give lone soldiers stipends? Because right now we have soldiers that are not getting the money due to them. We have a lot. This is all due to the government lack of funds. I mean, we have lone soldiers who gave their lives in serving and protecting
So-
us. And there's about 3 kibbutzim of
Haggai
lone
was a
soldiers.
lone soldier
I'm a chair. I was
So
alone,
then this
but
is a perfect
I'm a
question for
but,
you,
but
sir.
also I'm a chairman of a program as a volunteer. But I'm chairman of the board of a program called Michali.
Michali?
Yeah, called Michali. They also can enter the website and enter the Facebook
Okay.
and everything. I'm the chairman, and we have a wonderful general manager called Einat Oshri, and we take the lonely soldiers after they finish the army, and we help them to get apartment and to understand which job are.
So this organization is called
but
Michali?
it's
Michali,
called
yeah.
Michali, and they can.
And so what's the
So if I'm the
internet?
general manager of
Okay.
Gesher, this is the values we
Those
want.
are the values that they
We-
want to get for the lone soldiers. for
Because,
the-
all right,
for the social-
3 days ago, I got money for food for a lone soldier after the army. He just got released. He was from South America, 23 years old. They had his poor parents who were suffering into the recession in South America have to send him money, and it wasn't enough, and he was so embarrassed. So thank God we got him food. Beautiful people did mitzvot and gave him money and
I
brought him
think we
food.
want to help integrate not only the lone soldiers, but all the soldiers. The soldiers in the army, they get a 300 shekel wage. They're 18 to 21. We want to push forward that they get a proper family wage. That's people that go to the army, which is it's a constriction here in Israel, that they get a proper wage.
Well,
and they
that,
get proper
you know, when they
lifestyle.
go-
And the lone
when-
soldiers,
They give
When they go-
everything.
when they go to the army,
service,
when
they
they
give
go-
everything.
right,
And when
and
they're
they get-
going out of the army, the country must take care
Well,
of
you
the
have a lot
soldiers.
of people, a lot of the lone soldiers. You now have the difficulty of not only being a lone soldier and being focused and being ready to fight for the country. But you're stressed about the money. You're stressed. Okay, when you come home for Shabbat on your one Shabbat off every couple of weeks, you ain't got what to eat. And not only not what you ain't got what to eat, you also have no money to go out and spend anything. Not even to go out with a friend and get a drink and maybe forget about who has 30, 40
Of course,
shekels.
but now-
So these people,
Of course.
they keep all their problems. Their family, their mommy and daddies are not here, and it's a very stressful
Of
situation. So
We must to take these programs and make them more strong, and we need the states after the soldiers, because they give everything when they were in the army, and they're here in the state alone, And this is the values. The values is to give the soldier everything they need. They're not too many, and we must do it.
Okay, so let's wrap this
Wait,
up.
somebody has a question here. Ian Wilka. Why is there no criminal or background checks with people working with children in schools?
Well, that's actually a law that I'm putting through. It was supposed to go in the 21st Knesset. We're actually now on the 23rd Knesset, but obviously no laws went through. And there is definitely a big problems with that. In the non-religious schools, by the way, there is a background check, but only on men, not on women, and a lot of women are attackers themselves, which we wanted to put through. Michal was supposed to put this.
Also, Oli Levi Abuxis.
Oli
MK
Levi was
Oli
working
Levi
on it as
Abuxis
well.
was the chairman of the taking care of children
Right.
in the
We
Knesset.
definitely, in the next government, if we have a next government, we want to push this through. It's one of the values that's important: to save the children, to protect the children. Just today, I published the story in Maariv of a kid that the companion of the ride of the school bus stopped him on the other side of the street and said, "Run home." The kid ran home. But obviously, running across the road alone, without looking, it was a kid on the autism spectrum. And unfortunately, he got knocked over. Luckily, he's okay, big bruises, but he's okay. But if he would have, I saw the video, if he would have run 1 second more, that would have ended up in a tragedy. And the children are our most important part. Our children are the future. So we definitely need to make sure that the people watching over the children, people watching over our children, are the ones that will protect. And Meretz and Gesher are fighting for those values. We've always fought for children's values, and we always will fight.
All right, we got to end this, so
Do you
let's
see a
close
next
it.
government being formed, or are we going into a fourth election?
At this moment, it looks like we're
We
going in the
hope
fourth election.
we hope there's a
We should
government
just skip election
and a
3 and
social
go
and a
directly to
social
it.
government, but we need a lot of emet bakalfi. We need all the people elect to us.
If people vote,
So
in
why,
Meretz,
let's just
social,
end this. Let's just
the
end
social
this.
part
Yeah.
more
So
big.
why should people vote for Meretz and Gesher and Labor together?
עבודה גשר מרץ, אמת בקלפי.
The reason why people should vote for us is to make a change in Israel, to make that change for people. As soon as we're stronger, we can. The bigger we are, the bigger we can steer a government to the right way, in order that those changes, whether it's for Olim or whether it's for children, whether it's for soldiers, whether for everyone, for the whole
עבודה גשר
Israel.
מרץ, so people seeing people before everything.
Exactly.
All right.
We put people before everything.
We gotta wrap
This
this
is our
up. So
value.
let me just take a picture and
Yeah,
thank
of course.
both
אני
of
גם
you.
רוצה, אני גם רוצה, רגע. I also want...
Okay. I'm honored that Haggai is taking a picture with me. And Josh.
תודה מלך.
We have to say thank you for everything you're doing.
רגע, אבל עם הלוגו,
Come here,
Keep Olim, Keep
Move it over
Olim.
here a little.
Keep Olim together.
This way a little
קצת
bit
לפה,
more.
קצת לפה.
Okay.
Keep Olim.
All right. Thank you very much. I
Thank
gotta
you,
wrap up
thank
the
you.
show.
Haggai.
Very nice.
Haggai,
Thank you, Josh.
All right, another one.
Here we come.
All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Let me.
Thank you.
So, guys,
Thank
we had 6
Did I give
amazing,
me all the information so we could post it
amazing
on
candidates
the website and-
coming to talk to you today. And I want to thank them all. A few of them were Knesset members. I want to thank the staff and volunteers that are here, Vladislav Volkov and Sami Wanan. I'm a gringo. I love you. Spasiba Vladislav. Ann Pollard, my hero. Toda Shabbat and helped me. Yafa Safadi. My beautiful Yafa Bonita. Muy bonita. Muchas gracias. To all of you that wrote in questions and watched this, and you're going to be, a lot of people will be watching this tomorrow and the next day as they decide who to vote. We hope that this helped you in choosing. We don't tell you who to vote for. You have 6 amazing parties that came here, and we thanked them. And it was all because of you guys, because a lot of the parties didn't respond to us until you guys in KeepOlim called and hounded and nagged their party representatives to send people to us. So I thank you. My name's Liami Lawrence. If you want more information about KeepOlim, go to keepolim.org. If you want to visit us on Facebook and join the amazing, diverse group that we have on Facebook, it's closed. It's called KeepOlim in Israel Movement. We thank you very much. Toda Rabah from Tel Aviv. Shalom, and thank you to Urban Place for hosting us. Have a good night. Ciao.